There was a welcome dinner for the Navy. This was an event for elite people. There they could finally relax after a long time. After the main part, there was a private party. There, certain people could both dance and just chat. The evening ended at the city casino. The guy was hung with his orders. He stood at the entrance, thinking about something. Those thoughts were interrupted by his friend. That guy's name was Lucas von Ewald. His father, Count Ewald, was president of parliament. Another comrade joined them. The blonde was quite unfamiliar with this place. Their friend assured that he would get used to it with time. Eric Faber was the eldest son of the Faber family. His family was involved in iron and steel industry. The guy himself was cheerful, looking forward to entertainment. Eric and Lucas asked if their friend liked gambling. He closed his gaze, thinking about something of his own. The blonde sighed and lowered his head. He agreed to go inside with them. They were happy with his decision. A small group of them went inside. At the entrance, the guys were met by their old acquaintance. He told his experiences through the fact that the guys had not been in the establishment for a long time. The worker turned his attention to their third friend. His gaze begged the question of who the blonde man in the middle was. Lucas decided to introduce his friend. He said that his friend was often written about in the news. The newspapers said that during the Battle of the Tross Islands, a guy climbed onto an enemy ship. There he captured Fleet Admiral Levita. He was called the hero of the Empire. Bastian Clawitz was the captain. The man admired that he had met such a person. It was a great honor for him to see the protector of their lands. Having bowed, the worker invited them to go upstairs. He stated that he would allocate the best room for the company. They went after their friend. The captain reproached his friend for constantly introducing him to everyone he met. Lucas just refused. An interesting event caught Bastian's attention. Some poor man begged the guards to let him in to play in the casino. The security guard asked him to show the money. He mockingly called the man a beggar duke. The duke suddenly had an idea. He loudly declared that he could bet his daughter. The poor fellow assured that his daughter was worth more than any money. Eric approached him. He asked again whether the duke vouched for what was said about the cost of his daughter. The man confirmed his words. He clarified that the girl was the most beautiful in the world. The brunette smiled slyly. The guy slowly rose from the floor. He was interested in the poor man's rate. Mr. Faber turned to his friends. He asked if they wanted to play for such a bet. Lucas immediately agreed. They reproached the captain that since he came here he could not refuse. Bastian did not resist the wishes of his friends. He agreed to the party. After some time, the four of them sat down at the gaming table. The guy banked cards like a real pro. The blonde was pleasantly surprised by the work of the croupier. He suggested starting the game. While the party lasted, people crowded around them. Everyone was wondering if the duke would lose his daughter. Their game was coming to an end. There was a tense moment. The poor man was clutching his nerves, his last chance. Two friends have already thrown away their cards. They were both unlucky. Lucas asked what Bastian had. The captain laid out his suits on the table. He noticed that he initially had good suits for the game. Eric said that the goddess of victory accompanied their friend even on maps. They were happy that the blonde got the greatest beauty. Two people from the casino approached the duke. One of them said that he had to pay for his words. The second rejoiced that the duke would have a son-in-law. The poor man tried to convince everyone that there was a mistake in the cards. Bastian was disgusted to see a loser. The captain stood up from his chair. He made his friends leave. Lucas tried to persuade the blonde to take his winnings. The duke grabbed his son-in-law by the hand. He asked for forgiveness this time. He also promised that next time he would definitely give everything away. The captain was disgusted by the disgustingness of the poor fellow. The guy pushed the man and he fell to the floor. Mr. Ewald understood that his friend was no longer in control of himself. Lucas asked the security to bring the winnings. The loser got up from the floor. He was angry that he was disgraced in this way. The man argued that if the emperor found out how they spoke about the girl, then everyone would be in trouble. The poor man insisted that his daughter was of noble birth. He said that the girl would not even look at people like the captain. The poor fellow continued to praise the girl. According to the duke, it turned out that imperial blood flowed in his daughter's veins. The lady was sitting by the window. She was worried about her father because he had not returned home for a long time. Her sister fell asleep next to the girl. She gently touched Tira to wake her up. Feeling someone's hand, she instantly woke up. She immediately asked if their father had returned yet. Odette assured that everything was fine with him. The sister was worried that something might happen to the duke. Our heroine convinced her sister that everything would work out. She suggested we go to bed already because it was late. The two of them went to the bedroom. Tira was afraid of the sound outside the window. She compared the sound to a ghost crying. Odette squeezed her sister's hand tighter so that she would calm down. Sometime later, the younger sister was lying in bed. The brunette wished her good night. Tira said displeasedly that she was already an adult and there was no need to put her to bed. The girl just smiled calmly at her sister's words. The lady closed the door and went back to the kitchen. In the kitchen, Odette was making a list of things she needed to buy. After all, the next day she will start working part-time for Lace. The lady remembered their previous home. They even had hot water there. But due to their father's problems with funds, they had to find cheaper housing. The heroine thought about Tira's words regarding the sound of the wind. For the older sister, that sound was quite sweet. They managed to get the top floor of that house thanks to the allowance that the royal family kindly provided them. The girl remembered her mother. Her parent was the first and most beloved daughter of the previous emperor of their country. The king's daughter's name was Helen. The princess was the people's favorite. At a young age, she was already engaged. Her husband was to be the Prince of Rubita. Their future marriage was blessed by both the emperor and all subjects of the state. One night, just 3 months before the wedding, the princess disappeared from her room. As it turned out, she escaped secretly from the palace. In this, she was helped by her real lover, Duke Dyson, from an impoverished family. For the empire, the princess's actions were a real betrayal. The king was completely disappointed in his daughter. He decided to break off any relationship with Elena. His decision was to take away the girl's royal status and all her property. He expelled her from the empire. Those circumstances turned Odette's parents into poor wanderers. They had no choice but to go somewhere to the villages. But despite all this, the former princess did not despair. The lady recalled how her mother taught her royal things. All this education was aimed at the day when her family would be restored to their status and privileges. Mother taught the girl dancing and proper manners. Everything happened in a small village where the wanderers settled. Odette was also taught music, art, and foreign languages. The future princess would need all this. But the happiness did not last long. Unknown people killed my mother. And Elena died in the arms of her own daughter. The lady continued to look at the portrait of her late mother. She suspected that the same fate awaited her. Suddenly, someone knocked on the front door. The girl quickly headed into the hallway. She didn't understand who other than her father could come so late. There was a security guard from the casino standing outside the door. He asked again whether the girl was the daughter of the Duke of Dyson. She confirmed her identity. Odette understood that most likely the man came because of his father. He asked the girl to come with him. The guard said that his lordship had problems in the gambling house. He clarified that the girl would find out all the details on the spot. The lady said that in this case the man should have waited. She needed to change into different clothes. The casino worker tensed at her words. He was surprised by the girl's calmness. He felt sorry for the young lady that because of such a dad, her whole life was ruined. Odette remembered her mother's words, so that she does not lose her dignity under any circumstances. For her, those words were unforgettable. She said she was ready to go. For her, that mother's lesson about dignity was the last thing she managed to leave behind. The Duke tried to assure the worker that his daughter should not have been taken away. He argued that since she was of imperial blood, something terrible could happen. The beggar's words angered the man. After all, he himself put his own child in the game. He asked the poor man to leave, assuring him that screaming would no longer help him. Lucas asked the winner what it was like to wait for an audience with the lady who was considered His Majesty's niece. The captain was surprised at his comrade's gullibility. After all, I considered it a stupid decision to believe that scoundrel. Mr. Ewalt said that it would be funny if it turned out that the Duke was not lying. Eric intervened in their conversation. He also talked about that girl. Bastian lowered his gaze. It made him laugh how much they were enjoying the situation. He also wondered how far that joke would go. A guard appeared in the passage. He said that the daughter of the loser had arrived. Everyone turned their gaze to the entrance, waiting for the lady. Odette went inside to the table. Without further ado, she asked to make her father's debt public. People were shocked by her confidence. Perhaps the girl did not understand the seriousness of the situation. Eric turned to the lady. He said that she was not called here to pay a monetary debt. She replied that in that case there was no reason for her to stay here. She wanted to accompany her father home. Mr. Faber stated that after she took the Duke away, she would need to return back. Odette did not understand what was being said. The guy said that his lordship put his own daughter as a bet. He also clarified that the gentleman in the corner won. Bastian calmly watched her reaction. The poor man fell to his knees in front of his daughter. He asked her for forgiveness, and he made excuses that he didn't know that everything would turn out this way. The lady examined the captain's uniform. She concluded that those people were officers. If they were also aristocrats from the capital, then this was a specific problem. Running away with my father was a bad option. Guards would definitely be waiting for the heroes at the exit from the casino. The girl had only one choice. She slowly approached her future owner. Odette suddenly began to reason loudly. She accused the captain of having no shame or conscience. The lady was surprised that the defender of the empire spent his free time gambling. She asked if the guy knew that human trafficking was prohibited in their country. Bastian stated that this was not a place where law and morality ruled. He didn't really react to the girl's scream. She continued to accuse. She was surprised that the soldier forgot his honor and dignity only when he crossed the threshold of the casino. Odette asked to forgive her father's mistake this time. The girl offered to give the Duke's bet in money. The captain smiled slyly. He clarified that he did not want to receive his winnings with simple pieces of paper. Bastian came close to the lady. The guy said that she should have obeyed because she was now his prize. He made her take off her veil. The captain explained that he was not interested in either the money or the lady herself. But if the officer leaves everything as it is, he will be at a loss. Bastian promised that if the girl showed her face once, they would be considered even. The captain was sure that this would be enough for a spectacle. Friends wanted to ask for more. They couldn't wait to see how it all ended. The blonde understood that if the girl just left, those impudent people would definitely not leave him alone. He didn't want to be drawn into another adventure. The Duke was pleased with his words. He asked his daughter to immediately agree to this deal. He just wanted to get out of there. Odette asked through gritted teeth whether her owner would keep his promise. The guy assured that he would act honorably and would not deceive. The girl took up her black veil. She repeated that he should just try not to fulfill his promise. The lady showed her beautiful face. Everyone was shocked by what they saw. She looked into Bastian's eyes, waiting for the conclusion. The captain himself was surprised at her beauty. He believed that the Duke was blatantly lying to him. But surprisingly, the poor man's words turned out to be true. The Duke was enjoying his sleep in his room. He clearly didn't care what he did last night. Tira stood outside his room, looking through the slightly open door. She asked Odette if she should have locked it there. The elder sister did not understand the question. The girl explained that she had the idea that she didn't care about their dad. She would be glad if he was banned from being in the room at all times. The little one said that she tolerated all the Duke's antics. She has already gotten used to it and has come to terms with it all. Tira tearfully declared that she would never forgive her father for losing his own daughter in a casino. She was angry that the poor man, as soon as he crossed the threshold, immediately fell fast asleep. For him, it was as if nothing had happened at all. The younger sister asked how it was possible to be so shameless. Odette lowered her head and thought about the Duke's actions. They returned from the casino last night. This happened only thanks to the captain who forgave his father's debt. Fortunately, the officer kept his word. After Odette fulfilled his wish, she and her father immediately left the gambling house. Tira suggested turning to the emperor. She wanted him to help them. The girl hoped that the king would listen to them because, after all, the elder sister was his niece. The lady stood up abruptly from her seat. Odette was against her sister's proposal. If everyone knows about their father's affairs, they will be deprived of benefits. The brunette came close. She forbade her sister to turn to anyone for help. Tira looked at the lady in fear. The girl did not argue. She apologized for talking about the royal family. Odette was ashamed that she had yelled at the little girl. The brunette hugged her sister tightly. Our hero had no place to look for help from. For the new ruler of the kingdom, the lady was a despicable child who destroyed his own sister. Country houses of both the imperial family and other aristocrats were located on the coast of the seaside city of Arden. Their possessions were located near the capital. Initially, the entire northern part belonged to one ancient count family. However, due to the fact that not all aristocrats had time to adapt to new realities, many lands had to be sold. Those buildings were bought by rich people. The aristocrats were from the Clausewitz family, who were practically able to monopolize the Breck railway business empire. His aunt approached Bastian. Maria Cross was surprised that he arrived on that piece of iron himself. The captain calmly confirmed her words. She didn't understand why he did something specifically that his father didn't like. The blonde reproached that maybe in this way the father would spare his son. After all, because of Dad's cruelty, he could not afford a personal driver. The two of them walked into the mansion. The servants lined up to greet the new owners. The aunt clarified that Bastian's father was more interested in his property than the son himself. The captain noticed that unfortunately not everything belonged to him. His possessions consisted only of an old house and deposits. Aunt understood that this was all. There were only excuses. After all, there were rumors that he had inherited a huge fortune from his mother. Maria said that since Bastian did not want to tell the truth, she could only support him from the side. The captain was the only one who knew the real reason why grandfather trusted him. The blonde pretended that he did not understand what the aunt was talking about. He felt awkward, looking away as if he didn't really know anything. The woman decided to change the topic. She started talking about the upcoming party. That holiday was in honor of the engagement of his younger brother Franz. Maria said that Count Klein's daughter would be present at the event. Bastian said that he was aware of the girl's visit. The aunt forced the guy so that the smile on his father's face would not fade throughout the day. The blonde ignored her words and lowered his gaze. Franz was Bastian's half-brother. My brother's mother was an aristocrat. The father, in order to improve his status without any hesitation, appointed his youngest son as heir to the family. The captain was angry about all this. He understood that his brother himself was glad to marry the daughter of a high-ranking nobleman. The aunt noticed that Bastian should also find a wife faster. The guy happily agreed with her arguments. The woman decided to believe his sincerity. The only thing was that she asked the guy not to even look in Isabel's direction. Otherwise, new problems will begin. The captain asked who Maria was talking about. She was talking about the first princess of Berk. She also clarified that there were rumors that she was in love with Bastian. The blonde recalled how His Majesty came while studying at a military school. Then he arrived with his daughter. The girl was hiding behind her father. She looked at the guy lovingly. For the captain, those memories were unpleasant. Bastian stated that he felt nothing for the king's daughter. The aunt clarified that the emperor thought differently. The current ruler remembered well the fate of his elder sister. He believed that it was love that ruined her life. He was afraid that his daughter might face the same fate as Elena. The captain remembered that poor guy from the casino. He mentioned a similar story. Then the duke assured that his daughter had royal blood in her veins. The guy's thoughts were interrupted by his aunt. She asked if her nephew had heard her request. Bastian decided that the poor man was a simple swindler. He stated that the aunt should not have worried so much. He decided not to remember that situation in the gambling house. There was another quarrel in the imperial palace. Everyone was preparing for the upcoming marriage, and therefore everyone was nervous and angry. The empress found photographs of the captain from her daughter. She argued with her husband about this. The woman explained that this was not the norm, that the soon-to-be-married girl was admiring photographs of another man. The king convinced her that this would not affect the fate of their daughter in any way. After all, it didn't matter what feelings the lady had for Bastian, because it had already been decided who would become her lover. The monarch recalled that Elena also had a fiancé, but despite this, she ruined the planned marriage. The wife quickly came to her senses. She asked forgiveness for reminding the king of his sister's unfortunate fate, and she clarified that she was scared that the same story could happen to their daughter. The emperor assured that this would never happen again. After all, Bastian was a praiseworthy young man. But at the same time, the guy will never become a match for the princess. The queen delicately changed the subject. She wondered whether her husband was going to intervene in Odette's fate. The man was surprised why she decided to talk about the poor fellow. The missus learned that the duke began to visit gambling houses. She was worried that something bad might happen to the young lady. The emperor said that the only reason why the poor man showed interest in his children was Elena. They understood that that family had a terrible fate. The queen stated that she also despised the duke for his actions. But this did not mean that Elena's daughter had to suffer because of that madman. The woman offered to find a suitable groom for Odette. She gave the example of Captain Clawitz. The emperor was surprised at her option. He looked at Bastian's photograph. He was shocked by his wife's arguments. The monarch explained that the guy, despite his low status, became a hero of the empire and achieved a high position. He was worthy to marry a girl from the royal family. Mr. did not understand why the captain, who could get the daughter of any minor aristocrat, would be associated with Elena's child. The woman insisted that despite Dissen's poverty, they were still a ducal family. The wife assured that this would only be beneficial for the princess. After all, if Bastian was busy, then the girl would immediately make the right decision. The queen assured that the emperor could use an insignificant officer as he pleased. If they force Bastian and Odette into marriage, then they will be able to protect Isabel from meaningless love. In their world, marriage was just a form of business. For example, Bastian's father married the guy's mother and ended up receiving a huge inheritance. The second time, he entered into a relationship with a woman from an aristocratic family. So he tried to achieve high status in the empire. The blonde understood that if his father had a new chance to get married, he would do it. The guy decided to remember this tactic. A young girl approached the captain. She wondered what Bastien thought about his younger brother's engagement. This friend was Sandrine de Ravier. She was Lucas's cousin and also the only daughter of Duke Ravier. Her father was Phelia's richest man. The blonde seemed to be a commodity on the marriage market. Therefore, the guy wanted to ask the highest price for himself. They discussed the honor of the family of Franz's daughter-in-law. The girl said that the groom was clearly lucky with his beloved's family. She also clarified that in the future all those connections will not relate to the captain. Bastien assessed Sandrine. Miss Ravier was already married and then she became Countess Lena. But the marriage of the Count family began to crumble. Rapid preparations for the divorce process began. Thus, within a year, the Duke's daughter was supposed to return to her family as if nothing had happened. The girl turned to the captain. She stated that she was ready to do everything possible to change the blonde's low status. He recalled that he never forgot about their trusting relationship. Bastien clarified that he would also make every effort. The captain came close. The guy said that the Ravier family was the best candidate for marriage for him. However, he noted that the situation in that market was changeable. Miss Ravier took this as a threat, which she asked the guy about. She was calm, not afraid of those words. Bastien became more joyful. He replied that there was no message in the story. The captain clarified that all this was a little friendly instruction. Sandrina looked away from the guy. She reported that the blonde's stepmother was looking angrily in their direction. The woman clearly did not like seeing her son next to a member of a noble family. The captain said that the girl was very quick-witted. Miss Ravier did not particularly react to such compliments. The lady said that she was about to leave. That day, she only wanted to make sure of their relationship. Their communication was noticed by other ladies. One of them reasoned that there was clearly some kind of connection between the two. Another girl suggested that Miss Ravier's next marriage could be with Captain Clauvet's. His aunt heard it. Bastien wanted a break from so many people. The guy went out onto the deserted veranda to be alone with his thoughts. The image of that girl from the casino was spinning in his head. It seemed strange to the captain that the lady was so calm then. She didn't even think about crying. Everyone understood that the Duke did not even think about changing anything in his life. The blonde decided that Odette's future was determined by fate. Maria came up behind me. She was scared and surprised that her nephew came to the party. Bastien explained that he wanted to get some rest. The guy spent a long time in the war. He needed time to return to normal life. Auntie did not relax at all. She asked how it was possible to be so calm standing near that sea. After all, the captain almost drowned in that water as a child. When the guy was very young, one evening he was chased by 2 hungry jackals. Bastien ran as fast as he could, despite the strong bite. He wasn't going to say goodbye to life like that. The future captain turned onto the wrong road. The guy ran out to the cliff. There were powerful waves below due to the storm. The young man turned back to find another way out. But the jackals came close, preparing to feast on fresh meat. Marie, still very young then, stood on the shore. She was enjoying the quiet nature when a splash of water was heard in the distance. The girl looked at that place in surprise. Auntie quickly realized that someone had fallen into the water. She tried to see who was there. Bastien, meanwhile, was already choking on water. Marie recognized the guy and jumped into the water to save the young man. Then the aunt recalled how they were already in the palace. The servant bandaged the young man's wounds. The girl was trying to find out how it happened that the teacher lost his little student. The man asked for forgiveness for his mistake. He said that the horse ran off into the forest with the young master. Maria wondered how the jackals appeared there. The girl asked if the teacher checked the place where the lesson was held. The aunt continued to threaten the culprit. She stated that they would conduct a full examination and then Bastien's father appeared behind him. Jeff assured her that it was just an accident. Maria was not going to listen to her brother. She explained that because of that incident, the young man could have died. The girl was surprised that he was just going to forget about what happened. The head of the family said that he would fire the person responsible for what happened. He also said that the teacher's only mistake was that he did not check everything before class. Jeff walked up to his son. He asked if everything was fine with the young man. The guy was tired and sat with his head down. The father sarcastically stated that Bastian was saved only by luck and the kindness of fate. The captain looked in fear, hearing the words of his parent. Auntie watched the nice conversation between her loved ones. She was afraid that her brother was not himself. She looked at the boy's body. The young man's entire skin was covered with scars. Those wounds were clearly not from jackals, and they definitely weren't received that day. Then the girl firmly decided that Bastian should not have stayed in that house. Otherwise, the father will torture the guy to death. After that decision, Maria immediately contacted the relatives of the captain's mother. A week later, the young man was taken in by the Illis family. The aunt understood that Jeff was probably glad to get his son out of his house. But Maria did not regret what she did. After all, Bastian could only take revenge if he were alive. The aunt admitted that she did not like that divorcee from the Ravier family. Although she clarified that such conclusions were hasty, they were still correct in her opinion. The woman noticed that Sandrina had all the necessary qualities to achieve the captain's goals. Maria said that if he married Miss Ravier, it would be a huge problem for his father. Bastian thanked his aunt for her understanding. The relative continued the discussion. She convinced that the guy should not forget other candidates for the role of his bride. The aunt recalled that Bastian needed to constantly compare girls with each other for a better marriage. The captain turned his gaze back to the sea. He drew conclusions from Mary's words, and he said that he would try to remember her instructions. At that time, Odette had guests. The stranger told how Elena looked like the girl's father. That woman was the wife of Count Trieux, the cousin of the previous emperor. She was glad that she at least managed to raise her children with dignity. After all, the lady's appearance alone caused a stir throughout the entire empire. Mrs. Trieux asked where the Duke of Deason was. The brunette only replied that he was away on his own business. The countess was glad about this, because she did not have to see that pitiful man. The girl briefly asked why she decided to come. The woman said that there were rumors that the imperial family was supposedly going to provide Odette to her future groom. The lady jumped out of her seat angrily. She was surprised that the kingdom decided to dispose of her fate in this way. Mrs. Trieux did not particularly like to drag out the conversation. She quickly reported that His Majesty had decided to arrange Odette's marriage to Bastian Clovitz. The countess explained that the emperor's eldest daughter was madly in love with the captain, but he was an ordinary person with a low status, and therefore could not become a match for the princess. The brunette lowered her head. After reflection, she concluded that His Majesty intended to simply take advantage of Odette. The woman was glad that the girl was not stupid. The missus clarified that with the help of the marriage of those two, the princess will understand everything and forget about meaningless love. Moreover, everyone was aware that Bastian had no interest in Isabel. She also stated that the lady was lucky to have the opportunity to enter into a relationship with such a person. Although the Clovitz did not have a title, they were still a very worthy family. In the kingdom, they were nicknamed the Kings of the Empire's Railways. Their family was not of noble origin. However, the captain's father successfully married for the second time. He was accepted into high society. The exception was Bastian Clovitz. The guy was from his first marriage and the first son in the family. None of his maternal relatives were aristocratic, but there were rumors that the Illis family were the largest rich people. Although their business was only based on selling junk, it was rumored that they hid larger savings somewhere. It was thanks to this that one day the guy found himself among the nobility. People gave him the nickname Grandson of the Rag Picker. The countess understood that most likely Odette was not at all aware of those rumors. The woman assured that Bastian was an excellent candidate for a girl. The captain could not become the heir of the family due to disagreements with his father. However, he was still a naval officer, recognized as a hero of the empire. The woman said that no one would willingly want to be the son-in-law of such a non-entity as the lady's father. Odette listened to her and drew conclusions. She asked Mrs. Trieux to convey the girl's answer to the emperor. The countess was stunned by this demand. The woman recalled that this was not a marriage proposal, but an order. The lady asked why she suddenly had to obey such orders. The missus explained that it was because of her parents that the girl had to obey. Odette was scared. She was angry that she would have to pay for the sins of her father and mother. Grafia said it was a great opportunity for the poor guy. After all, the brunette couldn't have found a better candidate than Bastian. The girl said that she had never thought about marriage. Unexpectedly, Mrs. Trieux began to calmly calm her down. The woman explained that the lady could not be a servant all her life for her father, a gambling addict. The countess asked where all of Odetta's confidence had gone. She tried to convince the brunette to take a risk and try to get married. Mrs. Trio assured that perhaps the captain would have liked the poor girl's sweet face. Bastian had a personal townhouse on his property. The guy arrived there to spend the night that evening. Upon entering, the blonde was greeted by his personal butler Lovis. The servant leaned slightly to greet his master. The servant noticed that the captain's dinner was considerably delayed. Bastian explained that everyone was fixated on politics, so he stayed behind in order to check the relationship between the aristocrats. The blonde clarified that his plans are to serve in the army for at least a couple more years. The butler was surprised by such words from the gentleman. The two of them approached the room. Lovis kindly opened the door for the captain. The servant said that the guy had received a letter from Lady Odette. Bastian didn't understand who the girl was at first. The servant clarified that she was the emperor's niece. The butler bowed and said that he left the envelope on the table as usual. The owner was pleased with the work done by the young man. According to the etiquette of aristocrats, the lady was obliged to be the first to contact the right person. The captain hoped that the lady would not write to him at all. A few days ago, Bastian was ordered to come to the headquarters palace. There, the marine wanted to give the guy a message from the monarch. Marquis de Mel was an admiral of the naval forces. The emperor considered him a close friend, so he was instructed to deliver the letter. The man asked if the captain was aware of the fate of Princess Helena. Bastian knew that story very well. Mr. de Mel said that His Majesty was going to set the guy up with his niece. The captain understood perfectly well that they wanted to do this because of the problematic love of Princess Isabel. Bastian looked at the letter and was afraid to pick it up. The emperor could not force his niece to marry like this. However, this did not stop the king from spreading rumors about the upcoming wedding. The guy took the note to read the initials. All he could do was show favor to the lady in order to preserve the good name of the ruler. The captain smiled sarcastically. Bastian was attracted by her signature Odette Thérèse Marie-Laure Charlotte von Diesen. After some time, Odette received a response from Mr. Clausewitz. Having learned about the letter, the girl immediately returned home to read it. Bastian wrote that he agreed with the lady's proposal. He made an appointment at the Feinfeld Hotel on Wednesday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The guy also decided to briefly talk about himself. Odette felt uneasy from such a letter. She was embarrassed that Mr. didn't even deign to write his full name. She put the paper back on the table. The girl had no positive feelings from the response message. Miss Trier's words flashed through the lady's head. "This is not a request, this is an order." Odette understood that these were not all empty threats. The girl didn't really have a choice. She could not resist the will of the emperor as long as he paid them an allowance. The lady matched that dress. She was surprised that she nevertheless decided to wear the suit that she had inherited from her mother. Odette had a clear plan. She wanted to meet His Majesty at the ball in order to have a serious conversation with him. Lucas was getting ready for work. The guy complained that he received a military education, but ended up working at the headquarters. Bastian listened to his friend's discontent. The blonde asked why he didn't apply to work on the ship. Mr. Ewalt explained that in this case, he could have received from his father for wanting to leave the job where the old man had placed him. Lucas said that his dad really liked the captain as a person. He wanted to drink again with Bastian. The blonde replied that he was gladly awaiting his invitation. The guy jokingly said that his friend was born to please old people. He wondered what Mr. Clausewitz's secret was. Bastian smiled sarcastically. He was incredibly useful to Count Ewalt because he protected his son. Even at school, Lucas was constantly bullied. One day outside the building, he was beaten again. One of the bullies said that for the scion of such a family, he was rather weak. He was surprised that all the men of that kind were naval officers. The guy mocked that perhaps Ewalt was adopted since he was so worthless. He clutched the red hair tightly, preparing to tear out a piece of it. Bastian approached him from behind. The captain said something quietly in his ear and he became perplexed. The rude man wanted to turn around in order to find out who was behind him, but he quickly got hit in the face without having time to cover himself. The blonde turned to the second bully. He was scared and was not going to get into a fight. Having dealt with the offenders, Bastian was about to leave. But Lucas stopped him. The guy joyfully thanked his defender. After that incident, the Count blessed the captain. Friendship with the Ewalt family served as the beginning for creating the necessary connections. Bastian achieved good authority and position in the Navy. The blonde was getting ready to meet Odette. Lucas was aware of this and thought about it. The guy reasoned that most likely no one would believe in that engagement if Bastian immediately married Sandrine. The captain explained that the first problem had to be solved. Unfortunately, they could not ignore the emperor's direct order. Lucas noted that marrying the Duke's daughter was something you couldn't wish on your enemy. The blonde agreed with him, but alas, nothing could be done. Bastian hoped that after Princess Isabel got married, she would leave the kingdom. Until then, it was necessary to come to terms with that engagement. If the guy showed obedience to the emperor, then he would no longer interfere. Thus, the captain could in the future dissolve this union and calmly marry Sandrina. After all, even the will of the monarch would not stop Mr. Klowitz's plans. The main thing is that Lady Odette is not a fool and understands his intention. Miss Teresa was waiting for her future husband in that restaurant. She was nervous because it had already been an hour after the appointed meeting time. Her experience ended when the door creaked open. The waiter greeted Captain Klowitz. The lady was glad that Bastian finally decided to come. The guy slowly approached the table. When he came close, Odette was shocked to recognize him. She was surprised that a man from a casino could be called a hero of the empire. The captain also recognized the girl. He immediately turned to the servant and asked to check his reservation and table number. The waiter explained that this was exactly the order and everything was correct. The man reproached that the lady had been waiting for the guy for an hour. Bastian recalled the words of the vagabond duke. Since they turned out to be true, then the captain won this particular Odette. The captain decided to introduce himself. He took off his cap and replied that it was most likely not the first time he had seen the girl. The servant poured tea for the couple. The lady asked if Mr. Klowitz knew everything from the very beginning. Bastian said that he could not even imagine such an outcome. He mockingly said that he was surprised when the tramp's daughter turned out to be the emperor's niece. They locked eyes. At that moment, Odette realized that the captain despised her and did not intend to follow the will of the emperor. Miss Teresa started with the main thing. She begged the guy to give up the engagement and tell the king that nothing would work out for them. Bastian put down his tea. The captain asked for forgiveness and said that giving up their intimacy was not part of his plans. At their first meeting, instead of praying for mercy, the girl scolded Bastian like a small child. Perhaps Odette took advantage of her origins. Therefore, she was always confident and courageous, despite the fact that she was born poor. The captain asked if the lady knew the rumors about the Dyson family. She listened carefully, waiting for clarification. Miss Teresa asked not to prolong their conversation. It was morally difficult for her to talk about her ancestors. Bastian explained that he did everything to please the emperor. That is, he agreed to that engagement. The guy clarified that there will be no real marriage. He also added that that performance would end on the same day as soon as Princess Isabel got married. Odette was shocked and frightened by this plan. She was afraid of deceiving the imperial family. The captain understood that the girl did not understand his idea at all. The guy said that they were supposed to play lovers who were supposedly going to get married. Bastian said that since he was only a military man, he was obliged to obey the orders of His Majesty. The lady closed her eyes and thought about what was happening. She understood that everything was organized to protect the princess. But if the girl had known those plans, she would not have even come to that meeting. Odette suggested that after such a deception, the opinion of the captain in society would rapidly decline. The blonde calmly replied that he didn't care. He wasn't even an aristocrat, and therefore he didn't care. Bastian noted that it was in the lady's best interest to begin their plan first. The guy thought that the girl's opinion was more important for the emperor, because she was his niece. The captain believed that Odette also had some goals of her own, since she came to the meeting. The blonde decided that he was simply wasting his time. He grabbed his cap, preparing to leave. The guy advised his friend not to rush into an answer, but to think it over carefully. Bastian got up from his seat and wanted to go to the exit. But a voice behind him stopped him. Lady Dyson rose behind him. The girl silently handed him an envelope with a small amount of money. Odette explained that those bills were for tea. Miss Teresa stated that she had no intention of drinking it at someone else's expense. The captain couldn't help but laugh. The lady looked at the man in surprise, not understanding the reason for his violent emotions. Bastian put on his hat and replied that he did not need her coins. He advised giving them to the Duke so that his daughter would not have to go to the gaming houses. The blonde turned to look at her. The guy said that Odette was lucky that time that he was the winner. He also reminded that next time the lady's luck might turn away. The girl decided that he completely despises her. Odette was left alone. The brunette understood that such a plan would be successful, but she asked herself the question of what she should do when it was all over. Miss Dyson returned home. For the girl, it was the worst day of her life. She didn't want to see Bastian again. Rising to her floor, she heard screams from their apartment. It was clear from the sounds that the father was trying to take something away from Tira. Going inside, Odette saw her sister holding their box of money in her hands. The Duke wanted to take them away, probably back to the casino or for drinks. Dad raised his hand to his youngest daughter. He accused her of impudence, for which he tried to punish her. Lady Dyson reacted quickly. The girl covered her sister with herself. Accordingly, he took a blow to the face. The poor man didn't even immediately understand who he hit. Realizing this, he looked at his daughters in surprise. Odette did not react to his actions. The brunette asked if everything was okay with the baby. Miss Teresa addressed the Duke. She threatened that if he did this again, then her patience would run out. The father asked what she would do in this case. The girl reminded that if she is not there, then there is no imperial embassy. The poor man did not incite a quarrel. He called his eldest daughter a scoundrel. And then he went to his room. The lady was a weakness for the father. Without her, the Duke would have been left without any money. Because of this, Dad did not try to contradict Odette. Tira continued to sit on the floor and cry quietly. The brunette didn't want to lose the baby at all, despite the fact that they had different mothers. The girl's cheek turned completely red. Our heroine needed to be strong in order to withstand her father and that performance for the princess. Bastian returned to his hotel. He wanted to relax on the balcony, but his relaxation was interrupted by the butler. The servant reported that the captain had received an invitation to Her Majesty's birthday. The servant gave the letter to the master. He was glad that Bastian had achieved such success since he was invited to come to this holiday. The blonde calmly read the message. Most likely the invitation was addressed by the emperor himself and not by his wife. Probably this is how the monarch wanted to check how things were going with the engagement. The guy was pleased with this reward for her inconvenience. Bastian remembered Lady Teresa. He couldn't wait to see what outfit the girl would wear to the ball. The carriages were already approaching the emperor's palace. Bastian's father noticed a carriage passing nearby. He cried out loudly that Duke Herhart was riding near them. Jeff was glad that they had the opportunity to meet the most respected aristocrat in their kingdom. Franz asked what Dad was talking about. He reproached his son for not getting to know Matthias during his studies. The guy clarified that the Duke was so influential that he would not even communicate with his mother. And besides, the guys entered the school in different years. Jeff felt sorry for how much money and effort was spent so that his son could go there. Naturally, Franz achieved excellent grades, but this was his only merit. My father was also angry that after so much time he had not been able to enter the world of men, where everyone was trying to achieve success in art and philosophy. The mother decided to join the conversation. She said that the daughter of Duke Dyson was supposed to be present at the ball. Jeff wasn't particularly happy about this news. The father reproached the poor man for sinking so low despite his high position. Mrs. Clawitz clarified that the Duke had chosen to marry a noble lady, the Emperor's sister. She said that Bastian should have settled down and not missed this chance. The Clawitz family was accepted into high society thanks to the efforts of Viscount Oswald. However, this only applied to the parents and Franz. The captain himself was left with nothing, but at the same time Bastian was able to quickly lift it himself. Status. The stepmother was not pleased with this. After all, in order to get everything, she even had to eliminate Jeff's ex-wife. Franz said that if the elder brother married Odette, it could be a disgrace for their family. The missus explained that it did not matter who the captain married. After all, the guy grew up with his mother's relatives from childhood, so he was in no way related to the Clawitz family. The son wanted to ask something else, but Jeff interrupted him. The father replied that it was worth thinking about the future, not about the past. Jeff said that his older brother would also be at that ball. Franz had to show everyone what he was worthy of as the heir to Clawitz. In the banquet hall of the Imperial Palace, guests gathered downstairs. The servants loudly announced when someone came inside. The servant announced that Captain Clawitz had arrived. Franz heard immediately and expected his brother to immediately come up to him. But Bastian was in no hurry to greet his relatives. He was too narcissistic. He even showed up before the ball started. The blonde looked more like an animal. It was as if he was hunting people in the hope of finding aristocrats that would benefit him. Franz was expecting that society would finally see the difference between them. But his thoughts were interrupted by a stranger who pushed the guy so that he almost fell. Several men ran up to the captain. They all wanted to meet with him and even argued among themselves. The brother was shocked that Bastian was known not only to aristocrats, but even to members of the imperial family. His fiancée Ella von Klein appeared behind Franz. The girl was surprised that the captain also knew Mr. Herhart. Indeed, Matthias himself approached Bastien. They communicated with him as equals, like old acquaintances. The blonde turned his attention to his angry little brother. He slowly walked towards him. The guy approached the lovers. The captain greeted them. The older brother did not pay much attention to Franz but communicated with Ella. The girl said that it was unusual to see Bastien in the palace. Her husband asked through gritted teeth how Bastien felt while there. The captain replied that he was glad to enjoy such an honor. He wanted to do everything so that he could attend such events for the rest of his life. Franz was angry at his brother's ridicule. The guy wanted to say something else, but the servant interrupted him. He reported that the daughter of Duke Diesen had arrived. Herr Clawitz was in anticipation that Bastien would be disgraced by his potential daughter-in-law. The doors opened. Countess Trieu walked ahead of the lady. Everyone turned to the girl. Many wanted to see her. Franz himself froze at the sight of the poor man's daughter. He was shocked how she could be so beautiful. Everyone was waiting to see the pathetic heiress of the Disens. But Odette was better dressed than many aristocrats and members of the royal family. The captain immediately went to her. The younger brother stood in a stupor, realizing how lucky his brother was. Bastien approached the girl. As a sign of respect, he leaned over and greeted his bride. Odette reacted calmly to all this, because she was completely ready for such parties. When everyone finally gathered, the main part began. Everyone split into pairs and twirled to the music. The emperor and his wife were sitting in their places. They watched the aristocrats. The woman was glad that the party went according to plan. Franz danced with his daughter-in-law, but he was tense and constantly watched his brother. Bastien said that he was worrying in vain since the girl still showed up to the ball. He looked into her eyes, perhaps just admiring them. The lady replied that the emperor's order was also of great importance to her. She wasn't particularly interested in the captain's emotions. The guy suggested that in this case, Odette agreed to take part in their small performance. Miss Decina looked away. She remained silent because she was not ready to agree to such a plan. They walked out to the middle of the hall. The girl understood that after that night her reputation was ruined. But at the same time I decided to come anyway. Bastien tilted her sharply in camera. He guessed that the lady also began to use him for her own purposes. Odette did not expect such an outcome of the dance and was scared. The captain assumed that since the girl was silent, she agreed to that plan. Bastien leaned towards her face, preparing to kiss her. He explained that they needed to please the king and show that they were happy about the engagement. Shortly before the ball began, Odette and Miss Tria lingered in the corridor to discuss the essence of the event. The woman recalled that the future of the Diesen family depended on that day. The lady promised that she would do as His Majesty wished. But in return, Odette asked her to keep her promise and talk to the emperor. The girl did not want to be left without benefits. The countess assured that the king would not act so vilely. After Isabel marries, the poor will get what they wanted. The lady was grateful to the mistress. She went inside. The woman considered her poor children. Miss Trio was worried that Odette would disappear in such an unfamiliar world. The brunette stopped at the window. Behind the glass was the imperial garden. The girl admired him and remembered her mother's words. Elena told her daughter how beautiful the nature was in the monarch's domain, but such conversations ended in her tears. The lady wondered if mother herself would have done the same if she had known how everything would turn out. Odette did not understand how Elena fell in love with the gambling duke. For the sake of such love, she had to give everyone. Mother remained in those dreams. Although it was impossible to return anything, she continued to remember the happiness of her past life. The lady did not want to repeat such a fate. It was clear to everyone that a good life required a lot of money, but at the same time the girl was not going to sell her honor and pride. After all, those qualities were more important in the aristocracy than money. Bastien was about to kiss his bride, but Odette came to her senses in time and removed her head from the guy. The captain recalled that they had to play realistically, because an important spectator was watching their performance. Isabel saw their dance perfectly. The girl was clearly not happy with this outcome of events. Odette did not react to the guy's words. They silently continued their slow dance. The lady thought that if she had not thought better of it in time, she would have kissed her partner. Bastien wanted to improve the situation. The guy began to praise Miss Decina's outfit and jewelry. The brunette raised her head to look into his eyes. The lady thanked for the compliment. Although she did not understand the reasons for such in their communication, the captain asked if she would then return everything back to the rightful owner. Such words were incredibly offensive. Odette was not at all affected by that question. She wondered how a man with such a prestigious education could communicate so poorly. The girl suggested that the guy could talk to her like that on purpose. In this case, the heroine should have been more decisive and answered honestly. The lady said that naturally she was going to return everything. But she also said that she had enough savings to buy something similar on her own. Bastian said that Odette turned out to be more wealthy than he could have imagined. The brunette clarified that this was thanks to his care. And after all, that time the guy did not accept her payment for tea. The lady said that she did not have to worry about money while they were playing their roles in the play. After all, the captain was quite generous with her. Bastian happily stated that she smiled for the first time in all this time. The girl clarified that it was all for the sake of their viewers. The blonde was happy that she had the opportunity to spend the money on something more valuable than the Duke's gambling. The lady replied that she saved money thanks to him, so it was her gratitude. The captain said that in this case he would treat his partner to a gourmet dinner so that she could save even more. Odetta quickly rejected the offer. Bastian asked to explain her refusal. The brunette said that she simply could not be able to pay large sums. The guy asked if he really looked like a man who would sell his lady because of debts. Odette confirmed his assumptions. The girl also clarified that she stopped trusting him after their first meeting. Bastian understood that all aristocrats were stubborn, but no one could compare with the lady in this. The captain would continue to praise his partner in his head. But their dance and his reasoning were interrupted by a noise behind them. Princess Isabel came down from her seat. In addition to being angry, she was also clearly overly drunk. The royal daughter went to our couple. People looked in fear, not knowing what to do and who to call to stop the drunkard. The girl slapped Odette in the face without hesitation. She loudly ordered that the tramp should not dare approach Bastian. The princess realized that her mother had specially called her so that she could see Bastian and Odette dance. The girl had been looking only at the captain for 6 years now, but he still remained faithful to the emperor. A war hero and the daughter of a rejected princess. Such an alliance was stupid and absurd. Isabel believed that the guy did not like the lady at all. Bastian was unhappy to carry out such an absurd order. Only the princess thought so. It seemed to her that the captain had sacrificed himself so much just for her sake. The royal daughter decided that that evening she would confess her love to him. The emperor was against the marriage of Isabel and Bastian only because he had a low status. According to the girl, Odette was just a tramp who was ready to do anything for money. The lady's beads simply shattered into pieces from such a blow. At this time, the princess did not stop expressing everything she thought about the tramp. Bastian came to his daughter-in-law's defense. He tried to calm Her Highness. Isabel argued that Odette only needed money. The girl said that the brunette was no better than those courtesans. Everyone understood that the princess wanted to humiliate her with such words, but she had no idea how the lady lived before. The best option was to remain calm and not show your hurt. Isabel was surprised by this reaction and said that she did not notice anything except the jewelry. Odette silently looked at her offender. Her plan was to completely ignore any accusations against her. The lady turned to the waiter. She asked to keep the broken beads until the end of the ball. The servant, of course, was not against it. The princess wanted to be heard. The girl headed towards the poor fellow, but at that moment the captain stopped her. Bastian was completely disappointed. Isabel took this as her love being reciprocated. She threw herself into the guy's arms. The imperial daughter screamed how much she loved the blonde. Mr. Clawitz could smell the alcohol very well. He repeated his request for the girl to calm her emotions. The queen, seeing what was happening, fainted. Her husband did not expect such a reaction and immediately began to call a doctor. The captain's relatives watched the guy. No one knew what to do with the princess's drunken antics. The rest of the aristocrats discussed Isabel's love. She was compared to Elena. Only, unlike the new princess, the dead girl did not humiliate herself like that in front of everyone. They were wondering what attracted the girl to Bastian, and they assumed that her sympathy was only because of the big money and his abilities. The girl continued to climb towards the captain. She said it was time to show the world their closeness. The captain pushed her hands away. His gaze was empty and cold. The blow was not strong, but in this way he showed his dissatisfaction and desire to stop the intimacy. Isabel looked at the guy in fear. She asked why the blonde was still pretending and hiding his emotions. The princess's brother intruded into their conversation. The guy grabbed her and tried to take her away. The royal daughter tried to resist and asked to hear Bastian's answer. The captain returned his attention to the lady. He asked how Miss Decina was feeling. The brunette kept a calm face. Bastian was shocked by the girl's determination. Odette was about to continue the interrupted waltz in order to maintain her dignity. as if such shame and insult meant nothing to her. Just like the day the lady was sold for the Duke's debts, Bastian felt the same aura of nobility and strength. The captain admitted that the current Odette could be compared to a proud queen, which did not at all want to bend to anyone's claims and desires. Although she was pale and ready to pass out, she had no intention of losing her dignity. The girl finally earned Bastian's respect. After those humiliations, our couple was not at all going to succumb to emotions. They acted as if nothing had happened at all, but it seemed so only to the people around. Odette was all pale and her hands were shaking, but she didn't plan to show her weakness to anyone. The lady released her partner's palm. The girl was ready to collapse on her feet from fatigue. The captain reacted in time and held her body. Bastian clarified that it was not the right time to lose consciousness, so he was clearly trying to support his companion in difficult times. Odette felt calm from such words. The couple held each other's hands tighter, and so they left the center of the hall. Our heroes approached the woman who brought them together. Mrs. Trio considered the captain. She was amazed by the guy's aristocratic behavior. The countess asked if Bastian had a good time with Odette. The blonde replied that it was an honor for him to be at the ball with the beautiful lady. The captain said goodbye to the woman and his companion. Then he left in an unknown direction. Most likely he was going to leave the palace. Mrs. True wanted to ask how the girl felt, but the lady held on to her red face. Obviously her condition was not very good. Odette stubbornly replied that everything was fine, although it became clear to everyone that it was a lie after such a strong slap in the face. A child who endured all the humiliations of his position, and Bastian, the soldier who silently followed orders. The question arose which of them was more seasoned. Elena clearly worked hard on her daughter. The countess stated that the lady's mother was a good person despite dating a terrible man. Miss Trio also clarified that the evening was a success. Odette was perfect. The girl was touched by such words. The lady pressed herself against the woman. She said quietly that she was grateful to the lady for inviting her to such an evening. And the gambling father, as usual, tried to squander his money. But this time he was thrown out even from the worst casino. The poor man did not lose hope. He tried to prove that he would repay all debts after winning. The owner of the gambling house was not going to give it another chance. Mr. Deason recalled that evening. After that incident, only failures began. They stopped letting him into all decent places, and even the shabby casinos were also closed. The Duke was stopped by a stranger. The man recognized the poor fellow. He also suggested turning to Odette for help. He was clearly just as much of a gambling addict. There were rumors that the lady had a boyfriend. He suggested that Bastian would not refuse financial assistance to his companion's father. The poor guy didn't believe those words. But the stranger continued to assure. He said that he saw Odette in an expensive dress on a cool carriage and heading towards someone. The Duke himself ended the conversation. All he could do was wander the streets and think about those rumors. But it's true that the lady has been away a lot lately. Perhaps the girl was really hiding something. The man raised his head and just saw his daughter. He immediately wanted to hide behind the wall to spy on her. Odette was completely dressed up and was clearly in a hurry. After all, those rumors could be true. The Duke intended to check everything personally. This could be a great opportunity for him to get a large sum of money. Elite restaurant on Rainfelt Street. It was there that the girl came to meet Mrs. Trio. The lady was glad to be invited to that establishment. She started the conversation by asking what happened to that necklace after the ball. The Countess replied that there was no need to worry about the small decoration. After all, the brunette had to endure such humiliation. But Odette was ashamed that she had not saved the thing entrusted to her. The girl assured that she was ready to compensate for the losses. Mrs. Trio was surprised by this proposal. The lady explained that she was going to appeal to the emperor for a refund. And after all, it was his daughter who broke the necklace. The woman noted that this was not a bad idea. Odette assured that the king would definitely repay the debt to the countess. Miss True agreed to the proposal. She clarified that after the jeweler gives an estimate of the cost of repairing the jewelry, he will send a demand to pay the costs to the palace. The lady was surprised that the necklace could be restored. The woman said that since she had literally collected all the beads, it was not a problem. Odette began to shine like a bright flower. When she was with Klavitz, she always showed indifference. But when the girl was herself, she did not hide her real emotions at all. Mrs. Trio reported that the princess was sent to the summer palace. Now they should hasten with the engagement so that Isabel would finally forget the captain. Suddenly, a gray-haired man appeared behind her. He clearly knew the Countess closely because he was delighted to meet her. He was an admiral in the Navy. Odette became interested in this character. Mrs. True continued her conversation with him. Bastian Clawitz also approached them. The guy did not at all expect to meet his companion here. While the couple exchanged glances, the Countess suggested that the four of them should eat together. That restaurant was on the busiest street. It was mainly visited by rich people of secular society. The most visitors were at lunchtime. And that day all eyes were directed at only one table. Bastian began to understand the essence of joint gatherings. The two decided to introduce the guy and lady to many unknown aristocrats. Most likely the emperor was eager to speed up the engagement, since he used such a primitive method to spread rumors. The captain didn't care about those sidelong glances. After all, he was going to meet Odette again. The admiral told them about the cold outside. In the city of Laz, the weather was changeable, so such changes in April were the norm. The man said that the competition could have been postponed due to frost. The Countess became interested in what kind of event was planned. There was supposed to be a friendly match at the weekend. Such games were played between navies and ground forces to maintain harmony between the armies. Miss Trier turned to the captain. She wondered if the guy was going to participate in the event. Of course he had to play. The admiral loudly declared that Clawitz was the team's irreplaceable athlete. The blonde always showed remarkable results. The old people admired the guy's talents, and Bastian was focused on his daughter-in-law. The girl put down her fork and picked up a napkin to wipe her mouth. With this gesture, she asked for forgiveness for eating so little. The man said that Clawitz was a real treasure of the Navy. The captain was embarrassed that he was being praised as some kind of rare dish. The admiral turned to the lady. He invited her to attend the match too. After all, she was Bastian's companion. Odette thought about it. According to the rules of etiquette, it was quite polite to first take part in an official reception and then go back to dinner. Most likely the couple would have to perform the performance again, like at the ball. Besides, there could be aristocrats who were present that night. Most likely Isabel herself could have been at the match. Another demonstration of love between the couple could finally finish off the princess. The brunette didn't have much of a choice. Naturally, the girl agreed to such a proposal. Odette had a clear plan: to lock her heart and not let anyone in. After all, no one could break it like that. After everyone had finished their meal, the company went outside. The Countess stated that she still needed to talk with the admiral, and the lady was entrusted to Bastian. The guy needed to take her home. The old people wished to have a good time, and they themselves left in a carriage, leaving the couple alone. This was most likely their original plan. Miss Trieu hoped that Odette and her gentleman would be greeted by as many people as possible. Everything was done to quickly spread rumors. Bastian asked if the girl had any place where they could go. The lady was embarrassed. She stated that she did not understand the relationship between men and women at all, so the girl was ready to just do as the captain said. The blonde smiled slyly at these words. He said it might be a bad idea. Odette was confused by such words. She quickly suggested that we just go to a crowded place. After all, the main thing for them was to spread rumors. The captain wondered where they could go. Opera was a good option. However, the next performance was not soon, and it's no longer possible to take good places. There was another idea. This is a department store. But the guy quickly rejected such an idea. There were too many people there, a couple wouldn't even be noticed. Bastian thought about the hotel. But looking at the girl, I realized that it was definitely not worth meddling with her there. The lady looked in surprise, expecting proposals. The last place was something related to art. The captain asked if his companion liked the paintings. The Duke watched their conversation. He looked at the wall, trying to hear what they were saying. The poor guy was shocked that his daughter was dating a guy. So the words of that stranger turned out to be true. Mr. Disson peered into the blonde's face. It suddenly dawned on him where he had seen Odette's boyfriend. Our heroes arrived at the Museum of Art History. That place was perfect for a good evening and spreading rumors. As soon as they entered the territory, other aristocrats immediately saw them. The plan went well. Suddenly snow fell from the sky. The satellites clearly did not expect such weather. In Lek, even April could be so cold and ambiguous. The captain always thought that the lady was just another burden. But now Odette was like a gift that fell from heaven. Thanks to the girl, Bastian was able to visit the palace, and also was able to get rid of Princess Isabel. The blonde decided to approach his daughter-in-law. Although she went through a lot, she still remained a noble lady. An engagement to such a person would definitely elevate the captain in social circles. Odette was surprised that a cap was suddenly placed on her head. Bastian declared that it was time to begin their performance. He also knew it was worth making a few adjustments. After all, the guy was going to use the brunette as long as it was beneficial to him. People whispered about our couple. Many believed that they looked quite harmonious together. There were also rumors that the captain could run away with the princess some night, as happened with Elena. But the girls decided that it was stupidity, because Clawitz did not look like a person who could do such a thing. That day, the main exhibit in the museum was not the paintings but our heroes. In secular society, they have already come up with a name for them: the grandson of a rag picker and a beggar princess. The blonde said that they arrived quite successfully. Soon rumors would spread throughout society. Everything went according to plan. The guy realized that he was talking to himself. The lady was completely captivated by the picture and thought about her own things. Odette apologized for being distracted from the conversation. The captain said that she really liked art. Bastian suggested walking further through the museum. After all, there were a couple more halls with an exhibition, but the girl had to refuse. The lady explained that her little sister's classes were about to end. Tira's school was nearby. The brunette was going to go home with her. The captain was surprised by this news. After all, everyone knew that Elena had only one daughter. The baby's mother was once a maid in the Disson family. But after the birth of the child, the servant stopped living with them. Although for everyone Tira was only an illegitimate child, the lady always considered her part of the family. The Duke always disliked his second daughter. He never missed an opportunity to insult and beat the girl. Only the availability of benefits stopped my father from getting rid of Tira. While the royal family was pouring in aid, Odette could protect her sister. Bastian noticed that despite all the problems, the girls got along well. The lady said that the little one was always dear to her. The captain grinned sarcastically. The guy could never have imagined that there could be such a close connection between relatives. The blonde turned away from his companion. He suggested finishing their performance that day. Odette was aware that the brothers also had different mothers. But unlike the Disson sisters, they didn't look like soulmates at all. It seemed strange to the girl that the second son was the heir to the Clawitz family. She understood that Bastian was clearly hiding something that he could not talk about. Since this was the main street, traffic jams in the evening were not uncommon. The captain sat in his car and recalled how they separated. The guy offered to take the lady home, even with his younger sister, but she was categorically against it. Tira might have felt awkward in someone else's car, and Odetta didn't really want to cause inconvenience to her companion. In the end, she said that they would get home by tram. Moreover, the captain had his own plans for the evening, so he did not insist on his help. At the stop where Bastian was passing, there were those sisters. He was surprised at how different they were. The tram approached them, but there were so many people that Odette was pushed and the girls were unable to get inside. They had to wait for the next one. The captain saw this picture perfectly, but he didn't want to do anything. Public transport quickly left there and blocked the path for cars. The guy had to wait for the path to open. Our hero remembered his companion, how the lady was almost crushed by a crowd of people. He felt sorry for Odette. Still, the feeling of guilt took over, and the captain began to turn the steering wheel in a completely different direction. The car deftly turned onto another road. He quickly turned around and drove to the stop. Bastian arrived at the scene. The guy went outside and was about to address the lady, but he didn't find her. But my sister had already managed to leave. The captain was even slightly upset that he did not have time to help them. Although I had to think faster myself. The blonde could only watch the departing tram. The guy was surprised how stubborn his companion was. A few days later, it was time for a polo match. Everything was held in a luxurious and huge palace. Our heroine recalled her mother's words. Elena always insisted that secular society was a real battlefield. It was important to understand the hidden meaning of any conversation. Mother assured that one day they would return to their rightful place. Odette did not believe those words and believed that teaching etiquette was a pointless waste of time. But then the girl did not know that she would end up in such a place. A stranger approached the lady. She introduced herself as Sandrine de Ravier. She stated that she was glad to finally meet the brunette. The aristocrat told how she admired the couple's ball. The girl also clarified that if it weren't for the commotion with the princess, Bastian would definitely have introduced them. Odette was surprised that she was close to the captain. Sandrine began to approach almost right next to her. Miss Ravier asked me to remember her name. After all, now they will see each other quite often. Most likely, the aristocrat was not very happy with this. Sandrine, after she finished speaking, left silently. The lady was shocked by such impudence. Franz's wife appeared behind him. She said displeasedly that Miss Revere had not yet divorced Count Lena, but was already presenting herself with a past status. The green-eyed girl asked Odette if she remembered her. She clarified that they saw each other at the ball. The lady thoughtfully suggested that the stranger was the daughter of Count Klein. She was glad that the brunette remembered everything so well. Franz's daughter-in-law said that Sandrine did not want to continue to be addressed by her husband's last name. Also, everyone in secular society knew very well about divorce. Odette listened and thought about everything. She was left wondering what Miss Reviere's words about their frequent meetings meant. The girls were discussing the event. Everyone was hoping for some entertainment, since the beggar woman herself appeared. At the ball, Countess True did not leave Odette for a moment and was near her all the time. Those strangers believed that when she was alone, she would not be able to take a step. They were surprised that the lady was at such events for the first time, but at the same time she behaved naturally and confidently. The brunette, although she was from a poor family, could become an example to follow for other aristocrats. A stranger approached Odette. She stated what a lovely dress the lady had. That girl was Claudine von Brandt. Miss suggested that the brunette's outfit was sewn by the Lane Company. She also praised that the tailors from there were excellent at handling silk and chiffon. Elena was surprised. After all, this was the first time I heard about such an atelier. Perhaps this was a trap for the beggar woman. If the daughter of the Brandt family, who was known for her elegant taste, visited such a place, everyone would know about it. So obviously Lean simply did not exist. But Mrs. Klein quickly relaxed. After all, where could Odette have gotten a dress of such high quality? The outfit the lady was wearing was clearly the work of a skilled tailor. However, from the sleeves one could notice that the clothes had been altered specifically for another person. Another aristocrat approached Elena. She said that the emperor went too far in protecting his own daughter. After all, the king could at least prepare things for his niece. Miss Klein assumed that he simply didn't have time. After all, talk about the wedding spread around the area too quickly. But she also understood that if His Majesty had given the order, Odette would already be standing in a new and not altered dress. Seeing the lady's outfit, which was also old and altered from someone else's shoulder, one could guess how valuable she was for the ruling family. The second girl said that if Odette thoughtlessly agreed with Claudine's words, she would be terribly disgraced. The lady decided to do something smarter. She admitted that she was not at all experienced in matters of fashion, and therefore Countess Trio helped her. Luckily, the woman's niece had a similar build to hers. The brunette also said that she was going to give preference to the ateliers that Claudine praised so much. A serious verbal battle ensued between them. Observers couldn't wait to see who would win. Miss Brandt noticed the guys who were participating in the match. She said that she had to leave. Finally, she noticed that the lady's dress was from the Sabina studio. The girl asked for forgiveness for misrepresenting herself. After Claudine, that aristocrat also left. Count Klein's daughter was left alone with Miss Disson. Finally, Franz arrived. Elena immediately noticed him and went to her husband. She was glad to see the guy. Miss Klein tried to talk to him, but he only looked at Odette, as if he was embarrassed by the presence of the brunette. The lady wanted to approach the couple. She knew she should have said hello to the captain's younger brother, but Bastian himself stopped the girl. The guy took her hand, not allowing her to go further. Miss Disson wanted to go away and still talk to Franz, but her companion assured that there was no need to worry about such a little thing. The lady was surprised that he spoke of his brother that way. But the girl did not object to her partner. She took the captain's hand, and they went together to the main room. Franz saw very well the closeness of our couple. Was the little thing jealous? He wanted to get Odette. Miss Revere was watching them. The girl believed that the two were not close at all. She also began to understand the princess's action, or rather her motives. Sandrine seemed to be going crazy. She had a desire to possess Captain Klavitz. Still, she knew him better than anyone. If Miss Revere had not been married, Bastian would have become hers. Our heroes did not even think that they could be spied on. There were a lot of people crowded into the main room. All the spectators were excited for the start of the match. Our couple stood aside. Bastian was poking at the girl's face as if it were jewels. The captain praised her outfit. He assumed that the lady was able to save enough money because he didn't charge for tea last time. Odette appreciated the joke and smiled brightly. The girl asked not to focus on the cost of her clothes. Other people saw their sweet conversation. Bastian was compared to a priest who was stuck among the lionesses of secular society. But rumors about their wedding quickly spread. Many were aware that the captain had finally chosen a life partner. Sandrine listened to those conversations. The blonde noticed her displeasure. He knew it was worth talking to Miss Riviere. The guy said that he forgot to bring his equipment. He should have gone after her. The lady did not suspect any trick. Odette, on the contrary, was happy. The girl felt uncomfortable in that underwear. This was an excellent opportunity for her to go to the ladies' room. Sandrine quickly walked out into the corridor. She reasoned that Bastian would be hers if she were not married. The girl understood that even without a divorce, her father would not have allowed her to be with a man without a title. However, she was glad that the fool husband turned out to be for the boys. So Miss Riviere was easily able to demand an end to their marriage. But at the same time, her husband was delaying the divorce process, just to reduce the amount of alimony paid. But Sandrine didn't care how long it took. After all, the right person was already next to her. Bastian came closer to the girl. Miss Riviere immediately asked for an explanation for that engagement. Odette at this time was looking for a restroom. She wandered through the corridors trying to find the right room. The lady walked near an inconspicuous corner. From there, the brunette heard someone discussing her lover. Miss Deason stopped to listen in on the conversation. Bastian said he assumed everyone knew about his new daughter-in-law. The captain said that he simply made a deal with Odette. He hoped this would satisfy Sandrine's curiosity. Miss Riviere was delighted at the news. The girl asked her to swear that it was true, but Bastian refused to swear an oath to God. Still, these were not empty words. Sandrine suggested taking an oath in his honor and well-being. The blonde was surprised and said that it was already too much. The countess explained that lately she had been overcome by anxiety, and she justified herself that that was why she was acting too harshly. Bastian also remembered that he had received a letter from the king. The emperor greatly appreciated that the guy delayed his plans and helped protect the princess from stupid love. From Sandrine's words, it turned out that her father considered that all agreements between his daughter and the captain were no longer valid. Miss Riviere said that the blonde was smart to take a girlfriend during her divorce. This was better than him showing his impatience to marry a lady who was not yet free. Bastian confirmed her suspicions. His mistress compared the guy to her relative. The two of them were cold-blooded individuals. Odette was disgusted by their conversation and began to leave, but she walked slowly so that she could listen to the end. Sandrine asked for a small favor. She wanted small comforts. The guy listened to her carefully. Miss Riviere said, since one girl took away his days, then let the captain give her his nights. The lady hurried to leave from there. In principle, even though our heroine knew who Bastian was going to marry, this did not change the essence of their deal. After all, it's just a business relationship, and the rest didn't concern her at all. But at the same time, there was a slight resentment. For some reason, the captain delayed answering. This bothered Sandrine. She demanded to say something quickly. Bastian took her hand and moved it away from him. He said that it was not possible to give it to the countess. The captain explained that the moment-to-moment lust was not worth their friendly relationship. Sandrine decided to agree. She knew their friendship was too valuable to be tarnished. The guy took her by the shoulder. The blonde spoke so that the countess never loses her dignity. He pressed himself to the girl's ear. Bastian clarified that Miss Riviere was much more attractive this way. His careful gestures and smile completely controlled the girl. Although Sandrine understood that she was being used, she did not mind at all. The countess naively wanted something more than just love. But for our hero, this never mattered. Bastian had nothing but his own vanity. He didn't even like himself very much. Sandrine thought that after she got divorced, the captain would lust after her. After all, the girl could become the one our hero so needed. The captain returned to Odette. Preparations for the match were underway. All the players stood next to their queens. There was a certain tradition. It consisted in the fact that the aristocrat had to receive something from a noble woman. In this case, the gentleman would definitely return with victory. The lady was not at all ready for this and did not know what to give her groom. Bastian thought that although the girl would imitate others, she would not look like a real aristocrat. Thus, she will not be worthy to be called his bride. The captain took hold of her hair. He wanted to take off her tape. There were too many people watching the game that year, so they had to adhere to generally accepted norms in an amicable way. The guy carefully removed the lady's jewelry. Our hero was sure that as a talisman it was enough. Bastian promised to save this thing at all costs. He held the ribbon to his chest, saluting his beloved. The match has begun. All the players were determined to win. Nobody wanted to give the ball away and almost fought for it. The captain tied his talisman directly to his stick. Perhaps this was his way of showing his superiority over the others. Odette saw where her ribbon was. The girl tried to understand why the guy hung her there. The brunette again remembered Sandrine's words and her request. She couldn't forget what happened. Our heroine was clearly hurt. Miss Deason understood that this was Bastian's personal matter, and it had nothing to do with their deal at all, so she should have stopped worrying unnecessarily. Her thoughts were interrupted by the screams of people. Everyone supported their team or personally one of the players. The captain stepped forward. He brought the ball to the goal, but his opponent pressed him from behind. The blonde saw the ill-wisher perfectly. Our hero understood that with such ballast he would not be able to score a goal. But there were no impossible tasks. All you had to do was pick the right moment. Bastian leaned over so hard that he thought he would fall off his horse. Having waited for a certain moment, the captain sent the ball upward with a sharp blow. It was so strong that the ball seemed to simply evaporate from the playing field. The player who was standing on the goal was trying to see where the ball went, but he realized everything when the referee's whistle sounded. The man raised a blue flag. This showed that the naval team had scored a point. The winners rejoiced. One even cried out that he adored Bastian. Our hero was called crazy for trying to win like that. The captain stood in the middle of the field. He enjoyed how people rejoiced at his victory. Naturally, the knowledge that the team won thanks to him brought pleasure. The blonde noticed Odette. The girl didn't even look in the direction of the winner. The lady was just clapping because everyone was applauding. Mr. Clowitz saw her indifference very well. Most likely the guy was offended by this. He waited for her to look at him. Odette noticed that her lover was looking at her, but our heroine only closed her eyes, not wanting to exchange eye contact. Being devoted to his duties, the guy did not need to think about more. Bastian began to turn his horse around. The captain believed that the lady was simply using him, although the blonde himself was no better. Meanwhile, in the waiting room for athletes, Sandrine came to her brother. But the girl was not looking for him, but for Bastian. Lucas explained that he had gone to wash himself off. After all, our hero, to celebrate, was doused with champagne. Mr. Riviere was indignant at how strong his friend was. But his sister did not listen to him. She looked at the winner's putter. The captain never adhered to generally accepted traditions. After all, I always considered such things to be empty fun, which were invented by people from the nobility. But Sandrine thought that that time he tied Odette's ribbon out of spite. Miss Riviere believed that she should have been the first lady to give Bastian a talisman. The girl went outside. She dug a hole first. Throughout the match, that abomination got on the Countess's nerves. But now that talisman was dirty and lost in the ground. Most likely the tape will no longer be returned to its rightful owner. It wasn't long before Sandrine got rid of the ribbon. The girl asked her brother if Odette would be present at the banquet dedicated to the players' celebration. Lucas replied that she would most likely be at the event. After all, the event is in honor of Bastian, her lover. The guy assured that his sister did not need to worry. Everyone knew that the captain was in a difficult situation because of the crazy princess. Mr. Riviere was positive. He believed that all she had to do was wait. But he also accidentally said that the couple's first meeting was unforgettable. Lucas quickly realized that he had said too much and closed his mouth. If Sandrine found out everything, the blonde could be in big trouble. The girl wondered how well their first walk went. The brothers swore that in any case Bastian and the lady would never be together. But everyone saw how beautiful Odette was, so no one could predict what feelings the captain would have for her. Sandrine couldn't believe how such a beauty could live behind her pathetic father's back. If Miss Deason wanted, she could marry a rich man and escape poverty. Most likely the lady had even bigger plans. Miss Riviere guessed why she lived in poverty all the time. Thanks to that marriage, Odette could receive the support of the emperor. And Bastian was the perfect assistant to achieve her goals. Sandrine decided that in this case, it was inappropriate for her to passively observe from the sidelines and simply come to terms with everything that was happening. Our heroine was walking in the garden. All that remained for the girl to do was attend a banquet at the Admiralty. Since she was invited as a partner, she had to fulfill all obligations to the end. The unfamiliar lady addressed the lady. She was surprised by the incident. She asked the brunette not to lose heart. Odette did not understand those words, but she quickly noticed a crowd of people near a small pit. Miss Deason quickly ran up to the puddle. There was a talisman ribbon there. The girl was shocked. The lady decided that Bastian didn't care about her efforts. The poor thing thought that the captain no longer needed his beloved. One of the aristocrats came closer to our heroine. She was worried about Odette's condition. The brunette immediately asked to do her a favor. She wanted to leave the banquet early under the pretext that she allegedly felt ill. Miss Disson regretted that she had not initially defined personal boundaries. Now the girl wanted to think about everything in private. Odette quickly left the palace. She decided to take a walk through the streets of the city. If there was no need for assistance from the emperor, then there was no point in continuing the play. But because of her father, our heroine could not know how long they could still survive on the funds they were paying. All she could do was wait and save money until Tira finished school, and then run away to a place where the Duke would not be. The lady's attention was attracted by a stand with announcements. There was a flyer hanging there about looking for teachers. The paper stated that they were looking for a young unmarried woman with a middle-class education. The main requirements were knowledge of literature, foreign languages, music, etiquette. For Odette, this was just the perfect chance. The opportunity to finally get big money and leave my father. A carriage with Franz passed near her. He immediately noticed the girl. He didn't understand why the lady was there at all and not with his brother at the banquet. Mr. Clawitz immediately turned to the servant to stop the carriage. After all, he supposedly had urgent matters to attend to. The guy believed that it was a gift of fate. Their meeting could not have been a mere coincidence. Franz developed feelings for Odette at the ball in the royal palace. And finally, he had a chance to understand whether he was close to the lady or not. Lucas was talking about his sister, but the captain did not listen to his friend, but was thinking about his daughter-in-law. Bastian did not understand how she could leave without saying goodbye to him. This behavior was unbecoming for a lady. Still, she was the woman who strictly followed the rules of etiquette even with arrogant persons. Eric turned to the blonde. He immediately saw the tape that was on his partner's stick. Mr. Faber loudly declared that the item was a good luck charm given to our hero by the Duchess. The guys behind were discussing what had happened. Now it was clear to everyone why Odette did not stay for the banquet and left unnoticed. Lucas tried to explain something, but Bastian quickly realized that it was Sandrine who could have done this. Mr. Riviere wanted to prove that his sister could not have done this, but the captain did not listen to his friend. He headed towards the puddle. The blonde knelt down next to a patch of dirt. No matter what condition that tape was in, it was his thing. Bastian clearly decided that regardless of the reason why he took the item, because he promised Odette, he had to protect it. Franz carefully spied on the brunette. He wondered if the girl was okay. Mr. Clawitz learned about the tape from his sister-in-law. Ella said that this was how the older brother showed how in the future he also wanted to play with it and throw it away. Jeff and the stepmother were glad that the emperor forced the captain into that marriage. This was a great opportunity to pacify the blonde. But Franz was more worried about Odette's future. She was despised by literally everyone and even her fiancé. The younger Clawitz dreamed that the lady would become his wife. The guy thought that this way he would save the brunette from trouble. Meanwhile, Bastian was relaxing at his hotel. The servant was worried that the master did not rest even on holidays. The servant turned to our hero. He assumed that the tea was already cold and wanted to make a new one. The gentleman put the book down, and there was a catalog of women's clothing. The assistant noticed this and was extremely surprised. The captain gave away his tea. Rovis went to the kitchen. He suggested that the blonde might be planning to open a factory to produce things for girls. Bastian remembered Odette, namely that she always borrowed other people's clothes. In social circles, the girl was called the beggar princess. The blonde was amused that the king was so stingy. Since the monarch decided to use the Duchess as a thing to protect his daughter, he could at least buy new suits. His thoughts were interrupted by Rovis. The servant ran straight to the master. He reported that some unknown man was breaking in. At the entrance, there was a gambling addict duke. The man demanded a meeting with Bastian for a very important matter. The captain was kind and let the impudent guy into the hotel. Mr. Deason said that he was surprised that such a guy was called a hero of the empire. Bastian noted that he himself did not expect that their meeting could repeat itself. The poor guy said that he knew everything, and that he didn't even try to deceive. The blonde did not react in any way to such statements. On the contrary, he was glad that he didn't have to explain everything to him. Our hero suggested talking about the main thing. The Duke brazenly said that the grandson of a flea dealer could not marry a girl of royal origin. The man was not going to give his daughter to a man who had no status. The captain replied that he was talking nonsense. After all, the poor guy already sold Odette to the blonde once. so he shouldn't have made such speeches. Mr. Dyson justified that the decision was made under pressure from other people. Bastian explained that if not for his mercy, he could have gotten into trouble. The Duke was aware of the rumors that were spreading in the kingdom. The man thought that the blonde was really in love with Odette. The poor fellow clarified that he trusted the imperial decision. But since he was the lady's father, the captain had to ask his permission. Mr. Dyson had the right to give the brunette in marriage to anyone. The Duke called Bastian a pitiful poor man, because he had no status. The gambler said that since Odette was from a noble family, the guy had to try hard to get her. The captain realized that the poor man wanted to receive payment for Odette. But our hero quickly said that the man would not receive compensation. Bastian calmly said that the Duke should try to give the lady to someone else. But he noticed that the Emperor would under no circumstances let the brunette go at that moment. But the Duke should have played more carefully. After all, after such machinations, rumors like that girl slept with many men could arise. This could ruin the poor man's plan. The gamer wanted to object to something, but Bastian said that he would return his daughter, but a little later. Just like that night at the casino, the captain said that if Mr. Dyson was ready for a constructive conversation, then he should visit the imperial palace. The Duke was angered by this relationship. The man said that the blonde would not be able to leave so easily. He took all the dishes off the table, showing rage. This behavior was predictable for a pathetic person. Bastian knew this could happen ever since he got involved with Odette. The master ordered the servants to have the mister escorted out accordingly. The captain also asked to do something, namely contact the Sabin studio so that you can book a visit there. On the same day, Lady Odette received a letter from her fiancé. There the guy wrote that he had planned a meeting for them, on the square near the town hall. One night, even before Franz was born, little Bastian came to his parents' room. His mother lay there. The woman was stabbed several times. Her stomach was cut open. He examined the corpse. The guy was surprisingly calm. Perhaps this reaction was due to a state of shock. Near the deceased stood the father and his new mother. Most likely they were the ones who committed the murder. The captain woke up in his bed. It was another nightmare. Bastian held his head and wondered how he would get rid of such memories. The guy had an appointment with the doctor. The man reported that the marks from the gunshot wound were already healing. But Dr. Kramer clarified that despite his youth, the guy should not have returned to the front. The blonde talked about his hopes that he would tell the Admiralty only the facts, and not his personal opinion. The doctor suggested that Bastian, since he had become famous enough, should retire from the army. The doctor did not want to sign the papers allowing the captain to return to combat, but the blonde insisted that his main mission, regardless of location, remained to preserve peace. Mr. Kramer said that after such words he would never sign the decree. The doctor asked what the guy would do if he returned there. Bastian only said that he would simply wear another medal. The doctor was pleased with such courage. The man recalled their first meeting, which happened 14 years ago. Then, grandfather burst into Kramer's office. He stated that he had gone to pick up the boy from Klauwitz's house, but the old man also clarified that those relatives beat the child and his whole body was covered in scars. The doctor immediately laid the blonde on the couch. The young doctor was scared. Back then, Kramer wasn't a pro, and therefore, there were rarely patients who had serious injuries. The Illis family wanted to avenge their dead daughter. They had a plan to raise Bastian to be a real hero and make him the heir of the family. The struggle between former relatives continued for several years, but in the end it was Klauwitz who won. That day, Mr. Kramer was trying to figure out how the child managed to get so many injuries. Bastian answered calmly, as if he had repeated the text many times. From his words it only became clear that all the cuts were due to the child's clumsiness. But old man Illis still tried to report Klauwitz for ill treatment of his eldest son. But his attempts were unsuccessful. Jeff could hit accurately. Therefore, no evidence was found that could prove anything. The head of the family initially introduced Bastian as his successor. But then the man remarried. It was an interesting story. After the first wife had just died, it turned out that the other woman was already pregnant with Jeff's child, already in her 7th month. Bastian's upbringing included harsh methods to maintain discipline. The boy woke up long before sunrise. The guy immediately dressed as if he was preparing for an important meeting. Such a constant dress code was mandatory, as the father wanted. But at the same time, the future captain simply sat down to study. After a long educational process which not every child could cope with, regular physical training began. They were like military training. Bastian read and wrote for so long that his eyes became bloodshot and his fingers became swollen. He also learned horse riding. And Jeff was not stopped by the fact that his son once fell from a horse and almost broke his neck. The boy was also often thrown into the forest, where the guy had to live the night with only one gun. Bastian, after the death of his mother from 6 to 12 years old, simply tried to survive in the Klavitz family. The doctor often regretted that he had revealed to Old Man Illis the truth that the girl had been killed. Kramer could simply lie that Sophia died naturally. In this case, grandfather had no desire for revenge. Bastian got dressed and said that he was going to leave the office. Perhaps if the doctor had deceived everyone then revenge would not have become the #1 task for the captain. The time has come for the meeting. Odette arrived a little earlier and immediately recognized the atelier that the aristocrat had so praised at the meeting. The blonde flashed nearby. He didn't even say hello but immediately went into the building. The girl was surprised by such an unusual format of communication. The couple went inside. There they were met by the owner of the Sabine studio, Hilda Sabine. She was happy when she saw Bastian. The captain thanked him for the help provided. Madame said that there was no need to observe formalities. After all, Mary's nephew was also her nephew. Hilda turned to the lady. She said it was an honor to serve such a valued guest. The owner of the studio offered to take measurements of the girl and discuss the details. The lady was surprised that they took her to a luxury clothing store and did not even explain the essence of their meeting. The brunette clarified that an error had occurred. She didn't come to order clothes. The captain covered his dissatisfied companion with his body. The guy asked Hilda to leave for a few minutes so they could discuss everything. Madame asked to be called when the couple decided everything. Afterwards, the woman quickly went to the warehouse. Odette accused her lover of being rude. She asked why the blonde did not say all the conditions of their meetings. Bastian explained that the studio was fully booked a year in advance. So if it weren't for the long friendship of his aunt and Sabine, they would not have had the opportunity to visit such a place. The lady stated that she had no intention of wearing the clothes she received from the captain anyway. She said it was coercion for unwanted gifts. Our hero turned sharply to the girl. The guy clarified that he did not do all this out of his own desire. That day his rudeness was at its maximum for unknown reasons. Bastian turned away from the lady. He asked if she was aware of what she was called in secular society. The guy sat down on the sofa. The blonde recalled that the lady was called the beggar princess. Now everyone knew who Odette was in a relationship with. The captain was afraid that because of the girl's poverty, his position could also be shaken. But all this did not matter if only the honor and dignity of a gentleman changed. Bastian explained that the main thing was so that his finances did not fall. He believed that if someone was from a noble family, it automatically meant that that person was wealthy. The guy wanted everything he had to be the best. Odette had to be the brightest, most elegant and expensive. The lady suddenly stated that she also did not like the captain's nickname. She wanted the blonde to take this into account. The grandson of a flea marketer is something that Bastian could never change. Such a problem was impossible for people who were born into a noble family to understand. The guy suggested solving only those problems that were within their control. Life was much simpler that way. Odette was taken into a small room. There the servant took measurements. Hilda was pleasantly surprised at how beautiful the lady's body was. After all, she expected that the girl was a village simpleton who lived in poverty. The brunette perfectly adapted to the assistant's movements. It became clear to Sabine why Bastian behaved so atypically around his beloved. The worker reported that she had finished taking measurements. Madame immediately suggested one dress that Odette should try on. But you need to wait until the item is delivered. The lady was left alone in the closet. The girl coughed again. The captain heard this. The guy suggested that she caught colds quite often. There was a blanket on the table, which the blonde noticed. Bastian took that thing and went to the locker room. The captain said that he wanted to cover the girl so that she could warm up. Odette explained that she was not wearing any outerwear. The guy was not taken aback and said that he would simply turn away. The lady opened the curtain. The brunette quickly extended her hand to pick up the blanket. She was surprised that her groom was bothered by her cough. Bastian went back to the sofa. But Hilda managed to see how he conveyed something to his beloved. Sabine recalled how his aunt was worried that she could not understand the true feelings of her nephew. But Madame immediately guessed the truth. After all, there was one obvious thing that the worker understood after decades of working in the studio. If a man spent a lot of money on his bride, this was evidence of true love. After some time, our couple finished shopping. The servant sorted all the things into boxes and then put them on the carriage. Bastian was surprised that in just a couple of hours, they spent more money than they spent on his house in a year. The captain said that he had already planned one meeting. Therefore, they would not be able to have dinner together that evening. But Odette said that she had no intention of eating with the guy. Our hero told the lady to go home in that carriage. Hans would have taken her straight to the house, and for himself he said that the agreed-upon place was nearby, so he planned to go there on foot. Bastian remembered how the Duke destroyed his room. The guy asked Odette not to tell her father about the clothes yet. Miss Disson said displeasedly that even if he had not said so, she would have guessed to do it herself. Although the blonde said that he did it all for the sake of his own face and dignity. But as a result, Odette was given all her things. No matter how much she wanted to, according to the rules of etiquette, the girl had to thank her gentleman, which is exactly what the lady did, but briefly and quickly. The captain did not answer then. In the carriage he wondered how long the Duchess was going to stick to etiquette. Bastian immediately went to the penthouse. There a servant came running to him. Lucas was alarmed that the gentleman returned so late. The servant, short of breath, announced that Princess Isabel herself had arrived at the hotel. The captain did not expect such uninvited guests. That girl came to them. She hugged the blonde tightly. Her Majesty said that she came there to see her beloved. The princess waited for him to say something, but Bastian only said that he was just going to take the girl home. Her Highness, like a small child, squealed that she would not return to the royal family. It was quite an ordeal for Isabel to escape from the summer palace. She said that the captain could not even imagine the complexity of such a mission. Bastian reminded her that her clothes would not deceive the Imperial Guard. The princess should have left the penthouse before people started looking for her. The girl insisted that she was no longer little. On the contrary, she was already an adult woman who was ready to go against the crown for her lover. The captain wondered what all this had to do with him. Isabel thought that he denied their relationship only because of the difference in status. The princess said that it would be better if there were no shackles in the form of privileges and position in secular society. Odette, who was a complete beggar, always maintained her dignity. Unlike her Highness, who on the contrary was ready to be so humiliated by unrequited love. Bastian came closer. He advised the girl to hold on to those shackles more tightly. After all, even now the guy was patient only because Isabel was the daughter of the emperor. The captain asked the princess to be grateful to the king. Her Highness stated that the guy spoiled her opinion, and that he didn't care about anyone except himself. Meanwhile, someone was already actively knocking on the door. The blonde understood that the Imperial Guard was already there. The princess fell to her knees. Humiliated, she asked him not to do that. The girl prayed to Bastian to protect their love from the monarch. But the captain stated that as an imperial soldier, he was loyal to the royal family. Our hero had already grabbed the handle and was ready to open the door. When the passage was open, the guardsman immediately went inside. The blonde quickly explained that when he returned home, Isabel was already there like that. Bastian was about to leave, but a man stopped him. The guard stated that the emperor ordered Mr. Disson to be taken to the palace. The main thing was to bring the captain to the king quickly and quietly. Our hero did not at all expect such an outcome of events. Meanwhile, in the house of the poor, Tira once again asked if it was true that they would go to the amusement park. Odette naturally confirmed her words, but she clarified that they would go there only next Sunday. The little one hugged her sister tightly. The girl thanked her for literally everything. The brunette was pleased with Tira's emotions. For our heroine, working as a tutor was a pleasure. Moreover, they paid very well there. Her boss also offered housing. If Odette could get rid of payments to her father, she would not have to play in this play. The captain showed her kindness at least sometimes, but no one knew his true intentions. Moreover, Bastian had a contender for marriage. The lady just had to stick to the terms of the contract until it was all over. The girl imagined how they could go to a small town and start a new life there. Odette suggested one idea. When Tira graduates, she will go somewhere far away. And the most important thing for them was to live away from their father. The little one did not quite understand this, and replied that they had the opportunity to simply move to a separate house, remaining in that city. The sister explained that rent in the capital was too expensive, and there were too many people. The younger sister said that she would consider her idea. She stated that she was already tired and should go to bed. Odette understood that her sister Tira would soon be of age, and in this case the girl could go wherever she wanted. The little one suddenly asked if her sister knew who Clawitz was. The lady asked how she knew that name. Tira said that recently a man came and extorted money from her father. But the Duke said that Mr. Clawitz would sort everything out. Odette guessed that the gambling addict went to Bastian. And in this case, she should have found out everything as quickly as possible. The lady put on her cloak and headed for the exit. Tira didn't understand what was happening. The girl only made excuses that she had forgotten about an important meeting. At that time, slaps from blows were heard in the imperial palace. The queen hit the captain on the cheeks, but the soldier stood motionless. Her Majesty asked how Bastian dared to ridicule their family. The monarch said that the guy would not leave this house alive. The monarch left his embittered wife. In any situation, it was worth remaining in a sober mind. The emperor insisted that the woman speak to Isabel as soon as possible. She could not contradict the king. Her Majesty silently turned around and went to her daughter's room. Relations between all members of the royal family were strained. The king finally exhaled when his wife left them. He stated that they were going to send the princess abroad as soon as the sun rose. The official reason for leaving was rehabilitation. Due to health problems, the girl had to go on vacation before the wedding. Bastian took note of this. Isabel gave the nanny a sleeping pill to escape from the summer palace, and then she herself dressed as a maid and left the building without any problems. However, no conspiracy charges were brought against the captain. After the ball, the king sent people to keep an eye on him. In addition to meetings with Odette, the spies found out that Bastian constantly crossed paths with Sandrine de Ravier, niece of Emperor Berg and daughter of the nobleman Felia. Although the captain was a despicable bastard, he had the best options in his hands. The emperor began to list Bastian's girls: Princess Isabel, daughter of Duke Ravier, and also Odette. The monarch asked if there were other women he should find out more about. His Highness decided to ask directly who Captain Clawitz was. The guy said that he would be whoever the monarch ordered him to be. The king declared that he was indeed a soldier worthy of the title of hero, but Bastian was not a man who completely submitted to authority and order. This could be understood just by looking into his eyes. The emperor was afraid that he might lose his temper and still betray his master. The man wanted to understand how to limit Bastian, so that he would not even think about contradicting the state. The monarch explained that, intentionally or not, the guy had tarnished the honor of the princess and the entire royal family. Isabel's wedding was not just an event, but a major event for the entire empire. A national marriage between Prince Belov and the king's daughter had to take place. Bastian said that he himself hoped that the union between the states would be successful. The emperor explained that if there were problems with this, then the security of the kingdom would be in jeopardy. The captain would never be forgiven if this happened. The guy said that in this case he would simply go to the front. He assured that if only the king had ordered it, he would have been there the next day. The monarch did not listen to his stupid excuses. He ordered Bastian Clawitz to marry immediately. Odette was already returning from the captain's palace. The girl was in a completely depressed mood. Only a servant met her at the penthouse. Lovis said that the gentleman was not at home, and no one knew when he would return. The guy suggested that the lady just leave a message for Bastian. Our heroine only asked if Duke Dissen had ever visited this estate. The servant said that he really came without an invitation. It became clear why the captain suddenly started talking about a gambling addiction at the last meeting. Naturally, Odette has already agreed on the next walk. But since the father tried to take advantage of the guy's money, it complicated everything. The brunette lost the desire to continue their performance. The lady has already entered their house. She was worried why Bastian didn't tell her anything about what had happened. The landlady was loudly indignant. In the apartment of the poor people, as usual, there was a quarrel and a fight. The woman ordered the lady to quickly go upstairs and try to somehow calm down her family members. Odette did not react to all the noise. She just wanted to forget her identity and run away somewhere far away. But having come to her senses, the girl ran to her apartment. She first asked forgiveness from the mistress of the house. Meanwhile, the Duke once again tried to take away their savings from Tira. But the little girl was not going to give her father the money. The younger sister received a lot from the man. Odette just watched, not having time to do anything. The girl is already tired of enduring everything. Having gained strength, she pushed her relative quite hard. The man slipped on the stairs and fell down. The box of money simply scattered all over the corridor. The Duke hit his head hard. He lay there and did not breathe. Although the sisters did not really like their father, a gambling addict, they were extremely scared. The king said that the Empress's words were not a bluff. If he had only wanted to, Bastian would not have left the palace alive. There was no difficulty in passing off the incident as an accident. The captain could have been found dead in the alley of some brothel. But the monarch tolerated the guy's antics as a sign of gratitude for all his achievements. The blonde just needed to get married before the summer festival passed. The emperor wanted Odette to become Bastian's wife. But it also didn't matter if another girl became a companion for a soldier. The main thing was that the captain lived in marriage for 2 years, until Isabel marries Belov and gives birth to his first child. The guy wanted to explain that there were less than a couple of months left before the festival. It was difficult to have a wedding in such a time. But the king declared that this was better than Bastian's accidental death. The captain had to show the whole society how much he loved his wife, so that Crown Prince Belov would not feel any threat if he found out what happened between the soldier and Isabel. The emperor squeezed the guy's shoulder with his hand. He stated that if Bastian was going to do everything perfectly, he would literally get whatever he wanted. The next morning, the duke was taken to the city hospital. The sisters also came to visit their father. Tira cried all the way. The girl was worried that because of that incident she could be sent to prison. The lady assured that the man did not remember what happened. The gambling addict was drunk and therefore did not remember anything. Odette urged her sister to simply forget that evening. After all, the little one was not at all to blame. But Tira could not calm down. She was afraid that their quarrel could be seen by other residents of the house, and because of this they could get into trouble. The girl already wanted to go to the police to tell everything, so the punishment would not be so severe. The younger sister was more worried that for such a grave sin there was a chance of going to hell. Odette insisted that the little one was just trying to protect herself. After all, the lady did not believe in gods at all. But if the Almighty existed, then our heroine was ready to go to the underworld instead of Tira. The brunette didn't want her sister to be so nervous. Odette asked not to remember what happened anymore, so that it would remain only their secret. The little one hugged her protector tightly. She agreed with her older sister's proposal, but at the same time she quietly continued to ask God for forgiveness. Our heroine was ready to be with her sister to the end, even go to hell instead of Tira, just to fulfill his duty as an elder relative. Bastian was riding in his carriage. The guy was wondering how to organize a wedding. In order to carry out the marriage with a minimum of formalities, it was necessary to decide on the bride in the coming days. It only took 2 years to be with his wife, and the captain would have received anything he wanted from the emperor. In fact, the blonde would have nothing to lose from such a deal. But choosing Sandrine as the lover was not an option. After all, the girl still needed a lot of time to say goodbye to her first husband. At that time, the most reasonable thing was to at least get married to someone. And in a few years, they will return to Miss Revere. All that was required of the future, Miss Clowitz, was to behave quietly and inconspicuously. And then she could simply take a large sum of money and disappear from his eyes and from his life. But Bastian constantly remembered Odette. No matter how many options he worked through, that lady was ideal for the role of his wife. Lovis noticed the gentleman's alarmed appearance. He wondered why the captain was so tense. The blonde ordered someone to be sent for Miss Disson. The guy needed to meet her quickly. The servant remembered that a guest had come last night. Bastian was surprised that someone would come so late. Lovis clarified that he did not reveal the truth about where the captain was then. An unknown person left a note for the owner of the penthouse. In the letter, Odette expressed her apologies that her father was causing problems for Bastian. The girl also wrote that she would make sure that the Duke did not disturb anyone anymore. The servant handed over a second message from Countess Trieux. It arrived in the morning urgently, so the captain was obliged to read it at that very moment. The guy quickly read the note and was shocked. Our hero decided that he should have met Miss Disson in person. The Countess addressed Bastian on behalf of Odette. The girl had an unexpected situation and was forced to be absent for a long time. She wrote that the Duke fell down the stairs and was being treated at the Lotz City Hospital, that he suffered serious head injuries, including a broken spine. Doctors said that the poor man would most likely have to live with paralysis from the waist down until he died. Odette had been sitting next to her paralyzed father for days in a row. The girl didn't have much choice because she needed someone to look after him. The Countess was only able to visit them now because she was constantly busy. She was more concerned about the lady's condition than her father. The brunette insisted that she was completely fine, but her appearance was terribly tired. Miss Trieux made Odette take a walk. The woman assured that she could look after the Duke for a while. Our heroine finally agreed to take a short rest. From now on, she will have to live her whole life looking after her paralyzed father. The long-awaited job as a tutor, hopes of starting a new life somewhere far away. All this has now become a pipe dream for her. The girl just wanted to disappear so that no one would remember her. While Odette was trying to calm down, Someone quietly and unnoticed approached the bench. That stranger turned out to be the captain. Bastian immediately expressed his condolences about what happened. But then he asked for some time. Mr. Clawitz made a written agreement. Odette needed to read it and decide whether she agreed to such a deal. There, the guy described in detail the emperor's order about the wedding. The captain also wrote that if the lady married him, she would receive sufficient compensation in 2 years. But this made our heroine more angry, namely that Bastian decided to buy a wife and for such a long period of time. The guy clarified that this was only a mutual agreement. In fact, he simply offered work for such a time. Odette replied that the captain did not come on time. The blonde said that the emperor gave him too short a time frame for marriage, so he came to her so quickly, despite what had happened. Bastian also said that although the beggar princess was at the top of the list, this did not mean that he did not have more alternative options. He noted that such a deal could have saved the girl's life. After all, when the duke is discharged, the care of the patient will fall entirely on Odette. It seemed to the captain that relations in the Disson family were quite strained. The guy asked his possible bride about this. Bastian explained that the agreement was a proposal for a fictitious marriage. After marriage, they will simply need to live in the same house. The rest of the time, the couple had to play the role of lovers at official events, and the remaining hours will exist as strangers. All it took for Odette to sign was that her life would change completely. My father had the opportunity to spend the rest of his days in a nursing home with better conditions, and Tira could enter a prestigious school. The lady needed to live 2 years in marriage with the captain, and everything would definitely work out for her. The heroine's face became even paler. Miss Disson asked if it was true that Bastian, as soon as the contract ended, would immediately marry Countess Renat. She decided to tell how she accidentally overheard the conversation of lovers on the day when there was a polo match. The girl constantly coughed during communication. The captain explained that he still had to wait several years, namely until Sandrine sorts out the divorce. Odette was surprised that the guy's relationship with the emperor was so important that he was ready to postpone his wedding. The blonde confirmed her suspicions. The lady asked to be given at least a day to think about everything. But Bastian had already extended his pen. The captain repeated that he had little time. Therefore, if she wanted to refuse, she should have decided right there. Odette quickly agreed. She began to sign their contract, and she assured herself that it was just an agreement as before. The girl didn't care how the next couple of years might go. Such a marriage was much better than missing out on the opportunity to have a normal life. Our heroine wanted to put the document aside, but did not have time. Her strength was at its limit, and therefore she fainted on top of her future husband. A couple of minutes later, Bastian approached the entrance to the hospital. He held his beloved in his arms. Odette's whole body hurt so much that she couldn't even get off the captain. Because of this, the girl made no attempt to push the blonde away. Bastian walked into the reception area. He reported that he had brought in a patient with malnutrition and was going to see Dr. Kramer. The nurse tried to justify that her director did not accept ordinary people. The captain asked the doctor to tell him that the seriously ill woman was the fiancée of Bastian Clawitz. Active preparations for the wedding began. The Countess and Odette traveled all over the city and bought everything for the event. This was a burden for Miss Trieux. For the first time in her life, she was preparing for marriage in such a hurry. The lady was glad that the woman was providing her with such assistance. Finally, the heroine rested and fully recovered, which was visible on her face. The Countess said that there was no need to thank her like that. After all, she herself had a lot of fun spending an endless stream of money. The captain asked the woman to make Odette the most charming and beautiful bride among all, so they had to try their best until the very end. The lady didn't really like everything that was happening. After all, throughout the entire month, the guy constantly insisted that his beloved should have everything that was the most expensive and luxurious. Naturally, Bastian was not going to save on preparing for the wedding. He recently gave her an engagement ring that the girl was required to wear before marriage. Odette wanted to dissuade the groom from such gifts. After all, there was no point in them since the celebration was very soon. Literally everything that the captain bought was one of the most expensive things in their state. Bastian's workers have recently renovated the villa. The newlyweds themselves were going to live there. The Countess noticed that, as it turned out, Odette's fiancé was much richer than most people thought. In any case, despite Miss Trieux's busy schedule, preparations for the wedding went smoothly. The Duke was transferred to an expensive nursing home near the town of Lotz, and Tira has already been transferred to a prestigious girls' school in Karlsvard. But Odette felt confused. She was lonely being away from her relatives. At that time, there were regular quarrels in the Clawitz family. The captain's parents were shocked by what their eldest son was doing. Even Franz was angry with his brother. They were aware that the newlyweds were going to live in a new villa. But there was a small problem. The Clawitz estate and Bastian's summer villa were exactly identical. The guy even located his building on the same bank. The house was built very close to his family's palace. The captain explained his action by saying that although he had to leave the estate as a child, somewhere in his heart there were warm memories of their villa. Bastian suggested that he had a wonderful childhood in the Clawitz family. Jeff and stepmother were not happy about these words. Franz understood that his brother was crazy, but not to the same extent. The guy didn't understand how the captain managed to collect so much money for the house. But everyone knew that the fortune of the ragpicker grandfather had decreased significantly in recent years. But is there really such a legacy left there that Bastian had no problem affording himself a villa? Our hero said that the Clawitz family were similar to each other. The guy hoped to become a role model for the entire city. Bastian also reiterated that his behavior was just a desire to imitate his father, Jeff. Miss Riviere also came to see the captain's wedding. She wanted to find out why he decided to get married and did not even consult with his mistress. Bastian was surprised that the girl came at all. After all, the guy did not send an invitation to her family. Sandrine was angry that the captain was getting married and didn't even meet her. Our hero said that he had already discussed everything with the count. Mr. Riviere agreed to postpone their agreement in exchange for Bastian receiving the title within 2 years. Sandrine realized that her new lover was the man who only wanted money and business in the form of railroads. The captain explained that he wanted the status and property that was in the Riviere family, and the count planned to receive money from the Illis family in exchange. Bastian recalled that their agreement did not disappear at all and cooperation continued. Therefore, as soon as the deal with the emperor was terminated, then the guy planned to marry Sandrine. But if Miss Riviere no longer wanted to be with Bastian, then she should have considered another marriage option. The captain said that he should have left already. After all, according to plan, the ceremony had already begun. The girl was left alone and she could only sob because she was truly in love with our hero. After completing the preparations, the newlyweds came to the priest. The man announced that the husband could finally kiss his beloved. Bastian removed the bride's veil. Although she was looking at the blonde, her thoughts were not with him at all, but somewhere far away from here. Odette recalled the day when her father sold her in a gambling house. But now the girl is marrying the very man who won her then. The lady again assured herself that it was only a contract for a couple of years and nothing more. The captain was already reaching out to her for their first close contact. The Duchess reminded herself that there would then be a chance for her family to start a new life. The couple played out a rather passionate kiss, just to satisfy the emperor's desire. The official start ended and the banquet took place. Bastian and his wife went out to watch the sunset. He wondered if Odette liked what was happening. The girl did not understand what he was talking about and therefore asked again, but she addressed him as you, as before. The captain did not like this way of communication, and he repeated that they needed to communicate with each other by name. The lady asked for forgiveness for still not getting used to their marriage. He clarified that he was asking about the villa, in which they had to live for the next few years. Odette was surprised by her husband's words. She clarified whether it was true that the newlyweds planned to live there even after the end of summer. Bastian explained that he had already transferred the entire staff to the villa. The guy said that he still had not resolved all the issues in lots, so he was going to appear in the palace only on weekends. The Duchess was extremely happy about this news. After all, in this way they would only see each other 2 days a week. The girl literally beamed with happiness. She stated that she would try not to cause any inconvenience to her husband. Bastian clarified that his wife could do whatever she wanted, as long as her actions do not arouse suspicion among the public. The captain told about one rule, namely that it was forbidden to bring your family to the villa. Odette remembered Miss Trier's words about the similarity of the Clawitz houses. The girl asked if those words were true. Bastian explained that his move was made to make his relatives angry. But in this case, it was necessary to get rid of one of the palaces. There were a lot of people from secular society inside. Some saw the newlyweds talking. The guy took his wife by the waist. He asked Odette to smile. After all, she had to look like a happy bride for the rest of the day. The captain wanted to return to the guests, but the Duchess asked what the reason for their divorce should have been after a couple of years. Bastian asked her to come up with a reason someday. The lady agreed but said that she would think about it a little later. Odette was being prepared for the main part of the performance. The servant straightened her clothes and also her hair. As soon as Miss Disson's marriage was announced, another shameful label was placed on the girl. The servants were heatedly discussing something. The mistress asked them directly what kind of child the servants were expecting. Odette assumed that they were discussing a child who was supposed to be born in winter. She heard that many were betting on the boy. People accused our heroine of trapping Bastian when she became pregnant. Molly was scared that her mistress heard them. Odette explained that since everyone had heard those rumors, she also wanted to join in the conversation. Although the Duchess shouldn't have gotten hung up on nonsense, she also shouldn't have let the servants get impudent. The girl noticed that since it was difficult for her to talk about such topics, it would be better to remain silent at all. The lady asked the head maid what she thought about the rumors. After all, the woman was silent, and this could cause misunderstandings in the future. Odette noted that she expected only well-coordinated work from their relationship. The most important thing was to tame Dora, because it was she who controlled the rest of the servants. Evening came, the owner of the house saw off all the guests. The maid was with the Duchess at the time. Our heroine examined her new chambers. Odette wondered what her mother's reaction would be if she were alive. Bastian appeared at the door. The girl did not understand why her husband decided to come to her room. The captain asked why he couldn't go into their bedroom. The Duchess recalled that the contract stated that they were to play the role of lovers only at events. Odette stated that she expected separate rooms for sleeping. She asked if the guy really decided to break the contract immediately after the wedding. Bastian ignored her displeasure. The blonde walked purposefully towards the bride. The captain grabbed his beloved, preventing her from getting out. The Duchess sat motionless in a state of shock. Odette was simply speechless with fear. The guy exhaled and let go of his wife. Most likely in such a harsh way he wanted her to stop being indignant. Bastian walked towards one of the walls. The blonde asked the girl to follow him. The lady was surprised and watched without saying a word. He pressed his hand on the surface and a secret door opened. Already there, the captain, together with Odetta, was walking along the corridor. All the servants thought that the couple would spend the night together. They came to a secret room where there were all the amenities for sleeping. The Duchess finally understood why Dora was saying all that. The guy clarified that the servants should not have known all the details of that contract. Odette agreed to his request. The lady, in addition to being red, once again addressed her husband as captain. This naturally angered the blonde. The guy rudely reminded her to call him Bastian. Our hero wanted to finally show his wife as an ideal hostess at upcoming official events. The captain closed the door behind him. He paused at the entrance for a while and thought about literally everything. The next day, Bastian went to Lotz. There was a financial company located in the very center of the city. It was once founded by one rich man of the New Dawn. The employee said that progress would be reported to the boss in writing. The owner of the company, whose identity was hidden, completely supported the imperial finances. Bastian was the owner of the capital. The guy clarified that all remaining issues were going to be resolved at the discretion of the board of directors. Thomas Myler was the head of the company and the mentor of our hero. He wondered why the captain decided to reveal the whole truth earlier than planned. Bastian explained that he planned to show his personality when he married Countess Ravier. But after the deal with the Emperor, there was no need to wait a few more years. Besides, that month was the perfect opportunity to arrange everything. Mr. Myler recalled that until recently their company was perceived only as a simple credit bank. Grandfather Illis dreamed of creating a similar business and gaining recognition throughout the world. Bastian clarified that such successes were thanks to Thomas, namely, his contribution to the stabilization of the company. The captain reminded them that they still had a lot to do. The director naturally agreed with the boss. The situation of the nobles, who were unable to adapt to capital, rapidly deteriorated. The carefree days of enjoying life with just a good pedigree could soon be over. Bastian wanted the aristocrats to understand the value of what they had acquired, and the taste of all the losses. He had every opportunity to give birth to a king of a new era. Preparations for the banquet took place in the newlyweds' palace. All the servants worked actively to get everything done. Odette was also in the room with the servants. Dora asked the lady to double-check the menu and the arrangement of the guests at the table. Since the wedding day, the Duchess has been busy every day with invitations and organizing events. She also began to deal with the expenses of the mansion and personnel management. The girl gave the documents to the main maid. As a housewife, the heroine had to do a lot more things than expected. Odette had been so busy lately that she didn't even notice how quickly time was flying. But given the long period of their contract, it was good for the brunette that things moved quickly. But this also meant that the weekends when Bastian visited Arden also came quickly. The Duchess greeted her husband. She said that she really missed the guy. Bastian walked right up to the brunette. The captain said that he thought only about his beloved all week. Our heroes huddled close to each other. The husband kissed his bride on the cheek. Naturally, they played such a cute couple only in front of strangers. Bastian invited the girl to privacy. The blonde had something to tell her. After all, a lot happened during his absence. The servants were discussing the couple. The girls were surprised how close the gentlemen were. Everyone was glad that the newlyweds fell in love with each other so much. When they were already alone, Odette asked to let go of her hand. After all, there was no one around anymore. Bastian asked why, of all the jewelry that he gave to his wife. The Duchess only liked this small necklace. The lady explained that it was perfect for a formal banquet, because the frilly jewelry didn't go with her outfit. The captain said that the people who were watching that evening at the gambling house would be at the event, namely his classmates at the military academy. The couple needed to show how the girl's situation had changed since then. Bastian recalled that from now on the Duchess of Dissen became his legal wife. Accordingly, the guy wanted to have the best wife. Bastian believed that despite the fictitious marriage, that girl was his wife. The captain clarified that the brunette should have followed her husband's instructions. The guy wanted to ensure that no one remembered that Odette was once a beggar princess. On the day of the banquet, Lucas arrived first. The only problem was that his fiancée became very ill, so Mr. Revere had to take his sister with him. After all, it was not good to be alone at the event. Sandrine asked if the owner of the house was okay with her being there instead of Emma. Bastian did not particularly protest, because after all, Lucas was a close friend to him. Odette also approached them to greet the guests. Miss Revere immediately noticed the captain's wife's jewelry. The girl recalled that the Duchess was treated like a pitiful beggar just a few months ago. Sandrine envied the brunette even more. She thought that she herself had begged for the jewelry from Bastian. After all the guests arrived, the banquet began. The nobles sat down at the table and discussed various topics. Faber's wife said that Mrs. Clawitz was more beautiful than ever. Eric clarified that Bastian is very lucky with his wife. Odette was worried all day. But fortunately, everyone was very friendly. The servant approached the captain. He said that the gentleman had received a call on an urgent matter. The guy apologetically told everyone that he would return a little later. His wife did not protest in any way and remained humbly waiting for her lover. When the owner of the house left the guests, there was silence at the table. Everyone just fell silent at one point, as if they had run out of things to talk about. Odette was alarmed by such changes. The girl did not understand why the atmosphere of the event changed so much at once. Eric suddenly started talking about the Duke of Dissen. He wondered how the man felt after the fracture. The girl was surprised that they suddenly remembered her father. The lady explained that it was difficult for him to move, but his condition was already better. The brunette thanked the guest for his concern. Mr. Faber suddenly announced that thanks to the gambler's escapade that night, Odette now had the opportunity to enjoy all the luxury. The nobleman clarified that such a good father who gave a gift to his daughter deserved a long life. Lucas tried to stop his friend because his sister was not aware of what had happened. Sandrine immediately got involved in that conversation. She asked what happened that night. The girl asked Eric to explain everything to the curious guests. Odette sat silently. The heroine guessed that the nobleman just wanted to see her reaction to such a topic. The Duchess began to explain everything herself. The lady recalled that her father used to gamble. She said that the gambling addict bet his daughter. Then the officers became very interested. Eric didn't expect her to start explaining everything herself. Odette stated that that night she met her husband and his friends for the first time. It was Bastian who became the winner of that game. And since the guy was a noble soldier, he let the poor guy go. The Duchess clarified that all this became possible only because other officers also agreed with this outcome. The girl was grateful for the kindness shown that day. Eric's plan completely failed. The man did not expect that Odette would dare to tell everything herself. Sandrine said that the situation was quite romantic. She felt that after such a first meeting it was impossible not to fall in love. The Countess asked what would have happened if someone else had won that night. Miss Revere suggested that Odette's last name might have been something else, not Clawitz. Sandrine understood that the poor man was greatly affected by the situation. The girl expected that the Duchess would dare to respond to such a provocation. Bastian came up from behind. He stated that even if someone else had won, the result would have been the same. After all, the captain would then simply steal Odette. The guy leaned towards the bride's face. The heroes began to kiss, thereby showing their emotions and feelings to their guests. Sandrine did not at all expect that Bastian, whom she wanted to take as her husband, would act like this right in front of everyone. Eric and his wife were touched by the newlyweds. The girl said that they were a wonderful couple. Odette, after the kiss, looked at Sandrine's reaction. The Duchess suggested that Miss Riviere might know the truth about the fake marriage. Bastian noticed her sadness. The guy took his wife's hand under the table to calm her down. Eric assumed that the couple were disappointed that their palace was located so far from Lutz. The captain explained that this decision was made because his wife preferred quiet places. In addition, Bastian often came home, so such a distance to the city did not cause him problems. He continued to stroke Odette's hand. The Duchess felt ill. Even though she was near her husband, she continued to be perceived as his mistress. But when the heroine was near Bastian, the girl for some reason felt confident. Miss Riviere, as well as the mistress of the house, decided to take a walk around the estate themselves. It was much more interesting than a boring tea party. Sandrine drew attention to the wall, where the painting was supposed to be located. The girl noticed that the palace still needed a lot of improvements. Odette explained that after construction, the interior decoration had not yet been completed before the banquet. The guest seemed to ignore the Duchess's words. She silently entered one of the rooms without asking permission from the hostess. The brunette was offended by Sandrine's impudence. After all, according to etiquette, she should have asked if she could go somewhere in the palace. Miss Riviere said that she did not at all like the style of painting that had become popular lately. The guest clarified that such overly extravagant things were not her taste. It seemed as if the girl wanted to tell the Duchess to change the paintings. Sandrine forced the lady of the house to decorate the top of the fireplace with a mirror rather than a painting, and also to install Pelias's lamp and clock on it. Odette asked the Countess to behave like a guest. The brunette didn't like being bossed around in her own home. Miss Riviere clarified that she pretended to be kind in front of the guests, but the girls also didn't want the Duchess to make Bastian look stupid. Sandrine said that she had no intention of being polite to the tramp who had been hired as a wife for a couple of years. For Mrs. Clawitz, such words came as shocking news. She was also angered by the very impudence of the guest. Sandrine laughed at this reaction. She asked if the poor guy seriously thought their contract was a secret. Miss Riviere couldn't help laughing loudly. The Countess was surprised that Odette really considered herself Bastian's real wife. Sandrine stated that the captain was simply using his wife. After all, young men needed such entertainment. The Countess decided to warn Odette not to even risk getting pregnant and remaining in the role of lover for the guy. Sandrine clarified that she had only come to terms with the Duchess. If a child appeared, the guest would not feel sorry for him and would do everything to get rid of the child. After some time, the nobles left the palace. Only the owner, his wife, and servants remained at home. The heroine sat in her room and thought about those threats. She understood that upon completion of the contract, the villa would go to Sandrine, so the Countess's request that her tastes in the interior be taken into account was not entirely absurd. The girl finished grooming her hair and put away her tools. Odette tried several times to explain to her ill-wisher everything that happened, but the impudent guest saw in the brunette only the captain's mistress. Someone knocked on the door. Bastian's voice was heard across the room. He asked if he could go inside. The Duchess did not expect that her husband could come so late, but the girl allowed him to come in anyway. The captain opened their secret door. Mr. Clawitz had just gotten out of the shower, which Odette noticed. The brunette was bothered by her husband's appearance. She asked what happened since the guy came into the room for the first time since the wedding. Bastian wanted to start a conversation but froze. The hero examined his lover as if he was seeing her for the first time. The captain thought better of it and quickly turned away. Odette did not understand anything and waited for an explanation. The girl looked at herself in the mirror. She forgot that she was already in thin pajamas. The Duchess did not know what to do in such an awkward situation.